Hi, and welcome to the Intellectual Adventure Podcast. Today, we're introducing a new member of the group, Voltage.
Hey, what's up?
We're going to be talking about survival and the various techniques and tips that we can be using and implementing along our path. The biggest takeaway today will be the different terrains that we're going to be talking about. We have 6 in mind. Those are winter, desert, swamp, mountain, coastal, and jungle tropical. So we'll be going over those. Yeah, and we'll generally just apply all these techniques towards grasslands or open woodlands, because I mean a lot of these are going to be simple techniques or involve simple techniques that can help you everywhere, like such as tying a knot. Tying a knot is universally always useful to know. So things like that will be discussed, I'm sure, and Rosie will be making appearances as well, so that's to be mentioned. Hello, Rosie.
Essential to survival.
Today we will be discussing all things survival. So I welcome you into our Father's Day discussion. This is definitely a Father's Day topic now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, right.
A lot of fathers out there are like, oh yeah, I'm the bushcraft all day, man. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's not a knife. This is
a knife. Don't sell the UK.
Be careful.
They'll ban us. They'll be like, that's a knife. It's got a point on it. Oh no. Oh. Uh-oh. Put it away, man.
If it can slice vegetables, it can slice me.
Yeah, because you're a vegetable.
Oh my goodness, we love the UK, but man, their policies are a little whack right now, I gotta admit. Yeah. So, survival, folks. Dank, how are you doing today?
I'm all right. You? Are you asking me to start?
Oh, no. I do this every time.
Yeah, just introduction.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm great.
Excuse me, before we do this, I'll do it the proper way. Let's see here. We'll enter the comments. All right. So, Chad, how's your day today?
My day has been going pretty well. I'm in a pretty good mood because I'm excited about changes that are going to be happening in my life. So I'm just excited to be doing something different and doing something new. But I am, of course, equally excited to participate in this podcast and talk about something that I'm pretty passionate about and know a fair amount of.
Absolutely. How about you, Jeff? How's your day going today?
Well, I just want to start by saying this is a knife.
Oh, yeah. That's a good knife.
That's a good opening.
Yes.
Well used on bananas.
Ooh. I love it.
Of which I have 7 right now.
Bananas?
Bananas, yeah. I like to grow bananas.
Yeah, Jeff likes to flex about his bananas.
Yeah. They're not dead
awesome.
yet.
They're not dead yet. They're really cool though.
Yeah. Yeah. I just like that they're comfortable to be around. But I'm looking forward to today's podcast.
Yeah, it's been a while. Either way, it was kind of a hiatus we had. I had to deal with some family emergencies, and unfortunately we had to make some delays, but we have a lot of interviews in store. I have someone from Hewlett-Packard who is a software engineer, kind of a software salesman. So he understands software engineering, and he's going to be on the show along with other various people, entrepreneurs, investors, bartenders in old Western towns. Next year, we have someone who owned a saloon, who restored it and sold it off in one of the old West towns, who will be joining the show too. A lot of exciting events to occur on the Intellectual Adventure Podcast. So get the word out there, try to bring people in. And speaking of bringing people in, I want to introduce Voltage again. Voltage, how are you doing, and where are you from? What's your story?
Hey, so how you doing? Honored to be here. I'm Voltage. That's just my gamer tag. I'm not putting my name up just yet, but I'm just another lad. I'm from Canada, New Brunswick. I'm a combat engineer in the army, so I have a little bit of survival knowledge. I've had some experiences in my life that I can touch upon, but I'm by no means a survival expert. I've had some experiences, like I have been put in situations before where I need to kind of adapt, but more so in the Arctic environments, I'd say are the most challenging experiences for me personally. That's what I've dealt with in my time. That and the boreal forest that stretches across the entire planet. That and also some boreal forest experiences. But between that, I'd say that's the most experience I have on terrain. I've never been in a jungle. I've never been in a desert or a tropical area. Swamps, yes. New Brunswick's very swampy. Um, Interesting thing about New Brunswick, you'll find a swamp on top of a hill.
Yeah,
That's very strange.
That is a very interesting terrain feature to me. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To the low ground.
Right.
And I didn't know it was weird until I was told it was weird.
I will say something. Since I had to make that trip, I went to see Washington for the first time. I think I made the same drive you did, Jeff. Actually, towards the north, towards Idaho, because I went towards Spokane. I'm not sure if that's the direction you headed.
Right. 95 north, yeah.
97 north.
97.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I saw the Columbia River for the first time, and we happened upon a site where they built the first World War I memorial, and it was this old town that they tried to make that was since gone. They basically built a replica to scale of Stonehenge before it got ruined, and it was just up there on this hill overlooking the Columbia. Super random, really, really cool to see the terrain there and just how much water's flowing through. And I mean, it's wild what you can find in nature.
Oh yeah,
It's a pretty big river, yeah.
And scary.
I've seen it get pretty dang high. I mean, I've seen it where it's like brown and churning. I've seen that,
man.
but I haven't seen it actually flood in a way that would be considered like a disaster. I've seen it get high, but I know a lot of the rivers that flood in Oregon are going to be like coastal rivers, like Trask, Wilson, Rogue River,
Rogue River floods.
a lot of those rivers down there will flood a lot just because that whole drainage has the potential to get so much weather, so much rain, so much snow and it all has to funnel through one river. Because that's the other thing with the Columbia is it does have a lot of things feeding it. It just has a clearer funneling path to go down.
Yeah.
And there's
Only one way to go.
Yeah, and I was gonna say Bonneville Dam, which is the hydroelectric power dam where Oregon gets pretty much all of its power. It has a lot of other good fail safes involved to be able to move more water down the Columbia if it needs to.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
The engineering that goes into that is amazing.
Oh, if you were an engineer, driving the stretch of the Columbia would be pretty impressive. There's some pretty interesting feats, I mean, it's not feats of engineering, but there's some pretty interesting engineering that's had to go into that river and into that area and the gorge and all that stuff to be able to build around a river that big, because it is a pretty big river.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it a feat of engineering every time a new dam or bridge goes up, because ultimately that's always a new environment you're building that thing in.
Mm-hmm. And it's a new challenge. It's a different set of circumstances.
In Edmonton, everything's built on a swamp, so it's like pretty crazy when when they're building their shit. They have to, and that's why we have like mud jacking and stuff.
Wow.
But we didn't do like we're not allowed to build anything down. I don't know how high up from the river, but because the river flooded, know when it was, but it flooded long ago and destroyed everything that was down there. And so they're like, okay, we're not going to build anything there anymore. So everything's pretty
above
high
the
up.
high water mark. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like the odd rec center down there and a golf course, but it's not anything of importance. So,
Well, I think that's an awesome introduction into the topic of today, where we're going to be going into survival. So terrain is a big thing, you know, that plays into how you survive. And obviously the ecosystem involved with those terrains. If there's anything we want to present today for the engagement outpost, now would be the time to go ahead and roll into that. Oh, Dank, do you have any resources, books? Are there any tools that you would rely on?
oh yeah, I wish I had my camera on. I'd show you. I think it's a demolition hammer, but I use that when I camp because the axe side will one tap pretty much any log into good kindling and stuff.
Nice.
I also
No
bought,
one tap it.
it will. I also bought a sawed kit. I think it's sawed. Mostly just because I wanted a trench shovel because I like those. They're really handy.
Trench shovels are awesome.
Yeah, and I didn't want one of the ones that are the wooden handle and they can't fold up and they're just too big for me. I don't want that much, so I got one that folds up. And then it came with like a machete, a really nice knife. I don't know how big the machete is. I don't think it's full tang. And a decent hatchet, but like those are all great things to bring. I always bring the hatchet and the knives when I go camping.
Yeah, is there something kind of like this?
It's kind of like that
idea,
the
but
back
bigger.
end the back end's way bigger.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I actually had one. I brought it to a friend's construction site, and I'm pretty sure his Hispanic coworkers stole it. They're like, "Oh, this is useful because it's a crowbar,
Yeah.
a hammer, and an axe." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Woo!"
And
And I never
super
saw that
heavy.
thing again.
Like you don't have to put any force into it. You just make sure the corner of that axe hits the log and it'll split it.
Dude, my favorite thing about that though was I found that in an like a rent-a-car in the trunk in San Francisco.
That's awesome.
And we were like, wow, this is awesome. I'm like, yeah, man.
I found
love that.
that's another thing for survival. Always check cars.
Yeah.
Loot
Well,
boxes.
you
buddy.
know, but we will get back to that because there's some things I want to mention about engine blocks specifically too. But Dank, is there anything else you recommend?
Well, I guess it all really depends on where you're going, but it's always good to have like a little go bag, and make sure you always have like extra socks and good rain gear
Yeah, socks is a really important one, man.
and hiking shoes. Guys, I have some pretty good hiking shoes, and they're like almost waterproof. Like I can walk around in the rain and like my feet are dry. The wet feet are not good for survival at all.
No.
And do not put like people will put bags in over their feet for like
Yeah, don't do
dry
that.
to get worse.
No.
No, don't do that.
Yeah.
Your feet
Yeah,
can
no,
be
no,
wet. You just need to dry them out. And I
Yeah.
mean, like, you gotta think about your the shoe wear too. You know, like
Yeah,
like Dak's saying, you
there's
can't just keep them wet.
for wintertime too. There's these things I used to have for work called Bama socks, and you put them over your socks, and then in your boot they like soak up all the moisture throughout the day. So your socks are dry, your feet are dry all day. Those are I don't know if they'd be that good to wear all year round. They'd probably be way too hot in the summer and stuff, but good for
Yeah,
winter.
that's really neat.
Like I had boots with holes in them. They looked like glorified Crocs. And I wore these Bama socks, and my feet were dry all day in the winter.
Wow.
And I was warm in like
Nice.
-30. So I was
That's crazy, man.
I swear by those things. They did dye my feet blue though, but whatever.
Small price to pay for dry feet. I would pay a lot for dry feet.
I'd rather see them dyed blue than actually blue.
Yeah. I took a picture of him and sent it to my buddy, and he's like, "Oh my god, you gotta go to the hospital."
Um,
That was great.
I realized in that conversation there, we forgot to do our vinyl record share.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I don't know if Chad and Jeff both have. Oh yeah, look at that. They're ready, man.
At the ready.
Jeff,
No way.
go ahead and
Ooh, it's signed.
oh man, I remember this one.
Nice.
I got that autograph in the early 90s in Orangevale, California at a bar.
Oh, nice.
Robin Trower played at a bar. Trying to remember the place. And he and the band signed it.
That's sick.
That is so cool.
This is twice removed from Yesterday, which is a fantastic album. And 11 of 94 is when he signed it. When I saw him in concert.
Nice. I like the frame too.
Yeah, I had to frame it, you know.
Mm-hmm. I have a few of my vinyls framed just to hang them up, just because I like them for decoration too.
Yeah, they're cool decorations. They're cool.
Yeah, that's the only one I have framed. So, but because it's autographed.
I just grabbed the top one on
I
my
liked
stack.
Robin Trower for a long
Do you have
time.
vinyls too?
I wanted to get included here. I just grabbed the top one on my stack. It just happened to be.
Yeah, man.
Ooh.
Let's check this out.
We got Bottomless Pit of Death Grips.
Oh, dude,
Nice.
that's sick.
Yeah, it's not a bad album.
I like the conceptual. Oh man.
Oh, I love it when they fold out like that. I love those visuals.
That looks like peeling paint.
It does. It's actually kind of gross.
All right, Chad.
I like to try to challenge myself most times to try to find something relatively on theme. I'm not sure if I've shared this one before, but I picked this one up at a thrift store, and I just thought it was. I've been meaning to. I haven't actually listened to it yet. I've been meaning to listen to it, but The Language and Music of Wolves, narrated by Robert Redford. I really enjoy. Really enjoy presentations like this on nature. I'm excited to get to listen to it, but I felt like it was pretty on topic with what we're talking about here, which is, our existence in a natural place that we're now not really meant to be in, but that world is still the home of lots of wildlife and animals, and we have to respect it if we're in it, and especially if we're lost in it.
Wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Yeah, no.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I all around good choice, Chad. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I actually forgot you picked that one up. That one's really cool.
Yeah, I like that one. I like records like that. And of course, it's neat because I like to hear, people's knowledge and ideas about those things from that time, because of course it's not, it's not a new thing. I mean, there's probably a date on it somewhere. I bet you it's probably from the 1980s or 70s. Let's see if I can quickly find a date. It's hard to find dates on these sometimes. Oh, here we go. 1971. So it's fun to hear like what the opinions are and the not really opinions, but the knowledge of concepts and animals like that on spoken word vinyls from the 1970s. I just always think it's really neat to sort of compare it to what we know now versus how they felt about it or what they knew about it then.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the sounds of forests. I don't know if you've ever heard of the science that they do, where they go in and just capture what they can hear in that forest, and based on what they can hear, they can tell the health of that forest.
That's really cool.
Or get an average idea.
I believe it, because there's lots of things that make sound in forests are, just they're indicators. They're indicators of populations and of health in those populations. That's really
functional
cool.
Pieces of the ecosystem, right? Like
Right.
all of them just chiming in.
Yeah, it's
at
like
the
you got
same time.
insects, birds. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and it's especially prominent in rainforests and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where they do a lot of that heavy research, is in Central and South America. There's a lot of good audio files you should check out for that stuff too.
Well, you can't see all the wildlife, so you have to listen for it.
Yeah, and that's part of it. Is good luck chasing birds in the rainforest.
Yeah, right.
Good luck
Or
chasing
lemurs.
anything.
But drawing back to today's
Lemurs.
discussion, Chad, did you have any survival equipment, tools, or book materials that you'd recommend?
Yeah, and while we're in Engagement Outpost, I thought this would be a good time to mention too a lot of my knowledge and experience. I mean, of course, I have lots of lots of books. People like to give me books like this for gifts, and I appreciate them too. I really enjoy reading. This one is a lot about like self-reliance and survival inside of a like for the average person if things are to collapse, which I think we should talk about today because it'll tie into a lot of what I really want to bring to the table, which is my knowledge my knowledge about survival is based in my time spent in the search and rescue. Because from age 15 to 21, I was a ground searcher looking for missing people, evidence in crimes, and things like that. And I learned a lot about realities of survival and a lot about.
You ever see the staircase?
I've heard about that. I've had people ask me about that. I've seen some pretty dang strange things in the wilderness, but I did not end up seeing a staircase in my time in search and rescue.
I think.
What's Sasquatch?
What is a staircase? I've never
So,
heard of
Staircases. I think that's an SCP.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what SCPs are?
I know what an SCP is.
Yeah, I think the staircase is an SCP.
Believe it or not, Cameron, Wendigoon actually has a video on this too.
Okay, I'll look at Wendigoon's video. Yes.
The staircases
This seems like a can of worms.
But literally all the concept is that because people in search and rescue end up in places in the woods that nobody ever goes to because that's just the nature of what we do. And so there's been reports there's been enough mentions for it to be noticed of people finding staircases to nowhere in the forest. And a lot of times it's strange, but I haven't heard anything about that in my actual professional career as a search and rescue, but I have heard of that concept. I've definitely found very bizarre and creepy structures in the woods that don't seem like they should be there. I've found some pretty bizarre things.
Dan was talking to us before when we went up back to the Sierra Nevadas. He was talking about pyramids in nature and how there's a lot of points on these mountaintops, if you really look, that they pyramid. And he's like, that's not natural, man. In some cases it is, wind erosion or whatnot, but there's clear evidence of that erosion. But when it's stacks of rock, it is a very weird thing, and you have to go to certain areas. But yeah, I think there's a lot more to North America specifically that people don't give credit to in civilization's histories.
North America has a lot of biblical names to it.
And they also say that Washington knew about all the crazy crap that was happening in the national forests. So they just were like, you know what, we'll call it national forests and we'll enter at your own risk because there's no way you can make that much land a no entry.
Right. Unless you're Nevada.
And just put a bunch of military bases.
That's right.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, 90% of Nevada is military or national parks.
Well, one other thing I did want to mention too, because we were talking about gear and equipment. I have a whole pile of gear and equipment here and I feel like what I want to do is I might pull them out as we talk about different topics, or if we change topics, I might pull something up. Because I have lots of good things down here for fire building. I have a couple of firearms that I might show, depending on if we get that far. But I feel like I could kick it off by just showing, the base of a lot of what I believe to be survival equipment. This is where I think it's important to start. It's simplicity, reliability, and function. But that's what I really want to try to educate if we're gonna look at this as an educational way, because I think I want to talk about a lot of cool survival topics as well. But I also want to try to tie it back to what can the average person who wants to go out, what can they do or have on them at all times that doesn't cost too much, that will help them survive until search and rescue personnel can find them or they can self-rescue. So I want to try to really tie it into like what can the average person do to stay safe and to stay prepared.
Have you seen the Outdoor Boys?
I watch them occasionally. Yeah.
Yeah, he survives in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I like that he brings on his trips a lot, and I actually want to buy one when we move, is he dehydrates a bunch of his foods. So like stews and stuff, and then he'll just rehydrate them, and that's like a really quick, easy meal while you're out there. And you can pack a ton of them because they don't weigh anything.
Exactly.
And,
yeah, because
I dehydrate
a lot of my experience with missing people is people who were unprepared. So I have a lot of like ideas of like, oh, if this person just had this stuff, simple
we
stuff.
better find them quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oregon isn't by any means an extreme environment, but it is harsh. It can be unforgiving at best sometimes.
You got mountain lions out there, Chad?
What's that?
You got mountain lions out there, Chad?
Oh yeah, I've seen one.
Oh boy,
I've actually seen two.
No.
Yeah, I had a friend personally in Sierra Nevadas. There's this town. Let's just say it's even deeper into the mountainside, and it's a smaller community, so there's just naturally more animals present, and there's a lot of water that runs along the path of the road, so animals love to hunt around there, especially the mountain lions. So my friend was trying to walk back home in the dark, and he said a mountain lion was stalking him, and a sheriff picked him up, but he thought he would be dead if the sheriff didn't pick him up. I kind of think the same thing. Mountain
lions are the only animal in the lower 48 anyway that will actually hunt you.
Yeah.
That's wild.
I had another situation where a friend way back was cutting wood on his property, just literally by our hospital in the town. And he said he went to go put some wood in the woodshed, and he saw a mountain lion in the tree looking at him. And he said, I'm not going out there, Dad. He's like, I'm done.
If I saw a mountain lion in a tree, because I've seen mountain lions, but like if I saw one in a tree, I would lose.
That's terrifying.
It's so freaky. That invokes like a primal fear in me of like being dropped off.
When I was in camp as a welder's helper, one of the welders down the pipeline, a cougar bit his ear off. He thought he thought his helper was just joking around because he felt two like hands on his back, but they were the paws, and he like turned his head a little bit and then just grabbed him by the ear. But since they were welders, they just beat it to death.
Okay.
Pick the wrong target.
Yeah, but that sounds like what would happen if something like that happened on our job site, Taylor.
Oh my gosh, man! I mean, it's reasonable. You get a group of.
Dude, I would have.
Wow.
It's like what?
It's like having to all work.
Yeah,
Start
they had monkey
welding at
wrenches
it.
and shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it
And
was wild.
slat hammers are pointing at one end.
That's
No,
insane, dude.
I hope
And
to
then-
never have to use it, but yeah, cougars are why I carry a gun if I go deep out there.
Yeah, and then when I was when I wasn't welding anymore, I was building the camps. A couple of the supers had gone out and they were taking pictures of certain things, and then later when they went and looked at the pictures, you could see a cougar in the trees watching them.
Oh,
Cougars are scary, man.
Yeah, because I've
You
seen
only
one
know
two
they're there when
times.
they want you to.
Yeah, because one time I was fishing on a river and I was just sort of walking down the bank, and then I see, probably like maybe 40, 30 yards ahead of me, there's a cougar that's walking back up from the river. I assume it was probably drinking, and
Or fishing.
or fishing. Yeah, I stopped, and when I stopped, it like looked at me, and then it like just looked away and just kept walking.
It was like, you're lucky I'm full.
Yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like, oh, he just decided, no, I don't want to.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and then the other time that I saw one, this is when I was living in my car. I was up out in the mountains outside of like near let's see here. Sort of in like the Three Sisters wilderness on the outskirts of it. And I had been seeing all these cougar tracks in the snow and in the mud. And so I thought, what if I just sort of follow these around a little bit and just kind of look around? And so I just sort of was hiking around, just chilling. I mean, I had a firearm and everything. I was bored, and I found where it came, and I saw where it had gone to a stream, and I could tell where it had gone down and like drank. And so I was like, okay, well, I kind of want to see this thing. So I went up, and over the course of several days, would just hang out, listen to quiet music up on a vantage point where I could see down there, and I would just glass it every so often and just kind of hang out and observe. And then at one point I saw it came to that exact spot, and I was able to see it through my rifle scope. So I thought that was kind of cool. But those are the only 2 times I've ever seen a large carnivore.
Wow.
I've only seen it one time personally in the wild, and it really was underwhelming because we were going to and we got a spot on the hill, and so we go up there, and there's a cougar just sitting in our parking spot. And so my friend's like, oh, I mean, he's like, get out here. And then like we get out, we're like, yeah, okay, we're good. Like, all right, now we're gonna take a leak. Like,
dude, that's very Plymouth County.
I was just like, no, get out of the way. That's our spot. You're cool. You're chilling. Just go there. Go over there, man.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I've never really minded them too much, but it's because I also know better than to go into the forest alone. If I'm really going in there, that's like the best thing you can do for yourself. Number one, it's my recommendation is buddy system.
I would actually 100% agree with that. From my perspective in search and rescue, almost all the people that we look for were alone.
It's too true. I mean, your chances of survival are way higher when you have someone who can at least go and get help if you're injured as well.
Right. And if you have another person, it's way easier to stay on top of and win the mental game of survival. Because I have a feeling we'll talk more about the mental game of survival later on. But to me, the mental game of survival is one of the biggest things you can do to affect your chances.
I agree, absolutely.
I think at the end of this, we'll have a 7th terrain, so to speak, the mental terrain.
I love that. The mental terrain.
We'll go ahead and talk about that because I do agree, and I should have put that in because that is a massive, massive factor is morale.
Yeah.
So that leads us into Conestoga, man. Do you have any references or tools today that you want to show, or do you want to kind of do the same thing Chad's doing?
Other than my big knife.
You know what?
I like the Gerber multi-tool.
Multi-tool is a good mention.
Classic Gerber.
Basically, I loaded my own with the tools that I like. I didn't like it as it came. There were some tools on this Gerber that I liked and some tools on that Gerber. So I just mixed and matched them and put them all together for myself. I carry a folding military survival shovel in the car. Fortunately, haven't had to use it. I have had now. I brought up there's 2 types of survival in my opinion. One is when you're traveling and get lost or stranded in the wilderness, or maybe you have to survive, a night or 2 in your car because the road is closed because of excess snow. So, that, and you can quantify that as surviving in your car a couple of days, even in the city. And then, you pack your car with what you need when you travel and what you think you might need in a survival situation. I like that. Little saw.
Yeah, those are nice. That's a Gerber.
No, I prefer Leatherman. This is my Leatherman.
Yeah.
I have a Leatherman as well, but the Gerber was one hand opening, whereas the Leatherman takes 2.
Right. Yeah, and this was actually what I carried with me in search and rescue.
Nice.
I worked in a landfill, so I never knew what I was going to be cutting, and I actually put a little pair of scissors in there because I use the scissors a lot too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of tools on hand right now, as some of my stuff's packed away or whatnot. But I do have this, and this is just a cool thing that I do. I have shot it before, but
Craig Jorgensen.
Yeah, the Craig Jorgensen. Well, no, sorry, no, not the Craig. The 3040 Craig.
Yeah.
So it is a Craig, but
Not the Jorgensen.
No,
it's
nice.
a 1898 gun.
Beautiful.
It's illegal for me to show you mine.
I've got a 303
literally?
British.
Wait, hold on. Back up. Is it actually illegal for a Canadian to show a firearm?
It depends on the firearm.
I got a 303 British Enfield, which
Nice.
is highly accurate with the veneer sight on it. And then I have a couple of shotguns. I got a 870 Express special purpose that I could totally outfit that like assault type military style. It's in a wood stock though. It looks nice. Then I got a Mossberg 500 that's got all in synthetic black. So, and those are both 3.5-inch magnums. I keep the Remington with the turkey loads in it. You know, that'll take out a home intruder.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just thought of something. Well,
Need a musket.
Yeah.
Because protecting yourself against marauders is also survival.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, because I feel like it is worth it for our topic to dive into when it comes up. Dive into sort of the concepts of no grid or apocalypse style survival, because it's becoming more and more what's the word here, more and more of a possibility sometimes, feels like already.
And the WEF keeps talking about a cyber pandemic.
Interesting word.
No, I
never
think,
thought I'd hear that.
Yeah.
I think it's important. We could definitely touch base on that, and that'll be, I guess, the mental will be before that, and then we'll go into off grid.
So a couple other tools. I don't have, if my power goes out at the house for an extended period in the wintertime, I don't have a furnace that'll run. So I've been thinking about making sand batteries with alcohol candles so that they're refillable and they'll produce heat even though, and they won't produce carbon monoxide. Say like if propane, the propane heaters, stuff like that will produce carbon monoxide.
Yeah.
Whereas just burning a small candle and then heating a piece of copper and running that copper under sand and then containing that sand in like cast iron so it radiates the heat, just that little battery will help keep your house above freezing at the very least. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, there's YouTube. You can learn anything you want on YouTube.
No, that makes total sense. I mean,
yeah, there's a guy.
Copper definitely transfers temperature. I can attest to that.
Yeah, he there's a guy I watch. He does bonsai trees and has a greenhouse, and he builds these for the greenhouse to keep the bonsais warm, and so they don't go dormant and drop all their leaves. But
Bonsai trees are cool.
Yeah, I got into bonsai a long time ago. But the sand battery sounds really good. I got kerosene stoves, old, from the late 1800s, early 1900s kerosene stoves for space heaters. But instead of kerosene, I was going to turn them into sand batteries. They'll have the old look, but they'll have a less kerosene-y smelling combustion process.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Those are pretty much my survival. I grow my own food. I do my own dehydrating as well. I was going to get a freeze dryer, but I haven't pulled the plug. Those are expensive. But I've got two different dehydrators. One of them is an Excalibur, and I just made some fruit leather out of it last fall.
Nice.
So That was my first adventure into fruit leather. It came out very successful. I took some to church, and all the kids were going nuts over it. I did not have to bring any home.
Well, let's go ahead and move forward. Voltage, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah. I mean, I think, just like y'all were all saying, essentially, we're all agreeing on the Gerber, the almighty Gerber. Have that on you. Just have the Gerber on you. That's the tool.
The multi-tool.
Yeah, have a
All the
multi-tool
time.
on you. Yeah, have a Swiss Army knife, have a Gerber, have something, like have a multi-tool. If you could be resourceful, that's going to help you. I mean, but I think for me, is that a kukri?
Yes, it's a kukri. It's an actual kukri. I forgot I had this, but yeah.
I went into my stash. I grabbed myself a knife too, so I had to keep tilting the camera up here. So I got this is my latest edition. This has nothing to do with survival. I just kind of pulled this knife out. This is the lighting so bad. Oh, it is a bayonet. It's a Ross rifle bayonet from 1916.
Yep, World War I. I was gonna
That
say.
is super cool.
And look how long it is. You know what I mean? It's fucking
terrifying.
So I mean, like, these bayonets are massive.
Yeah, I gotta get a bayonet for mine.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that has nothing to do with survival at all, actually. I mean, I'd recommend more of a blade that's actually sharp, and it's not for punching. It's for slicing. It's for sawing, right?
It'll help you survive a bonsai.
Biggest thing for me is oh yeah, exactly. And especially if the if you need to take it to the enemy, then you can give them a cold steel, right? I mean, so I think the biggest thing for me though is you got to know how to control your body. You got to know how to deal with the environment. That's a very nice. That folds up real nice and small, eh? How much that weigh? That's
This guy's like I'd say like a pound or like two.
Good for construction. That's too heavy for survival, I think.
I don't know. It might be lighter. It's really hard to know right now. I've been carrying so much stuff lately that's heavy, but it does feel heavy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a pruning saw. You know, it's got the 2-foot long blade on it, but it all folds into one package, and it's aluminum, and it's got like a single wing nut.
Oh, Sven saw.
Yeah.
Sven saw. That's actually one of my favorite tools.
And it's very packable.
Yeah, that's actually one of my favorite tools of all time, because it's like you can carry a bow saw, a whole bow saw in a package that's like the size of a. It's kind of hard to find a size.
It's as long as it's as long as the blade itself. The blade fits inside the handle.
Mm-hmm.
These two are about the same in weight, oddly enough. So
yeah, I believe that.
But that if that gives you a reference.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Yeah, pocket knives are heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you could, but yeah, I mean, I'd take the pocket knife with the tiny like 1/2-inch blade on it, 1/2-inch saw on it. You know, it'll do the job eventually. Yeah. Not 1/2 inch. No. Yeah, you need branches. I mean, so that kind of brings me to my point. I mean, like, you got to know how to. Tools are great, and then you got to learn how to like use those tools. You got to learn how to feed yourself. You got to keep yourself cool when you need to be cool. You got to keep yourself dry when you need to be dry, and warm when you need to be warm. And there's.
I will give you a pro tip. Here's a tip that I learned from beach or coastal. Well, and this applies to anything, so I'll put it as my reference. Is bottle caps actually make really good nails in a pinch. You can fold them in and hammer them with a rock, and then you can have it pinching twine or something, as an anchor point. And as long as you have a solid piece of wood, and you bend that bottle cap in the right shape, you can really make a solid anchor point with something that you could find in your car or whatnot. So That's oddly something that I would recommend. Because a lot of times in survival, you're not going to be carrying directly nails, you know? So anything, and of course you can use wood, but at the coast, some of that wood is so brittle, you know, having something, but we'll get to the specific terrains. Does that close out everyone's general references and recommendations on that?
Yeah, I think in total, you need to know what environment you're going into, and you got to know how to we can get more into it, but like dressing yourself is extremely important. Dress yourself right, and know how much water you need, and know when to especially in the cold, you need to do things that are uncomfortable. You need to take a shit when you need to take a shit, and if you don't, you're gonna start freezing to death. And that's it's shit like that, and it's very uncomfortable. It's -50. I understand. You know what I mean? But you gotta fight your natural instinct. You have to know what to do with your body in certain examples. So your inner self doesn't kind of just your laziness, your hesitance doesn't get you killed.
Yeah. The demon on your shoulder doesn't win.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We'll go ahead and move ourselves into the trial grounds. So, because you mentioned that, and because our first topic point is actually winter, I want to ask you, is that true that if you hold in taking a shit?
I mean, I kind of made it a little extreme, but it's true though. It's because you have just more material in your body that you need to heat up.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. I didn't think about it that way.
It applies even more to urine, because urine has crystals in it that will form in your body if it drops below a certain temperature. So your body will prioritize, if you have a full bladder, it will actually prioritize heating your bladder, which you don't feel because it's taking blood away from other parts of your body. So that's why if you're in your sleeping bag in your tent and you have to go to the bathroom, you're going to get even colder. It's it's best to just do it, or pee in a bottle, anything else than just sit there and have to pee, because it'll sap heat away from you. And it applies to fecal matter as well.
Yeah, and also being in the
16 ounces of water, what it takes to keep you hot.
That's true. That's a lot of energy, right?
Yeah,
that's a lot of energy. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Energy is another theme I think we'll end up coming back to a lot during our topic. It's just the core concept of energy, taking it in, putting it out, all that.
Your body's an engine. You need to, and it the
chemical engine.
Yeah. So it's really cool.
Mm-hmm. Electrochemical.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of the Arctic, again, sleeping in sleeping bags, just like I was saying, being uncomfortable, being oh, I don't want to do this, but you have to do it, right? Yeah, get off the ground, right? When you're in terms of winter terrain, I'd like to say Arctic, because Arctic terrain is completely different from. This is the most experienced, but I'm the most experienced in this type of terrain, I'd say, opposed to anything else. My second best would probably just be, your average North American forest environment, right? Or the Canadian Shield. So, but in the Arctic, it's very interesting. Have you guys ever been up there, past, have you ever been up to Alaska? I just went recently. I had the opportunity to visit beautiful Alaska recently.
I think Conestoga Man's the only one.
Yeah.
Really? Were you? Yeah, you've been up in Alaska, eh?
Yeah, did the inside passage up through Juneau, and did the White Pass route too.
White Pass,
which was a railroad trip up into Canada from Alaska.
Oh, nice.
Along the White Pass, Dead Horse Trail, that kind of thing.
Alaska is interesting. It's
a lot of survival up there.
There is, yeah. That was the coldest I've been in my life up there. That was first time I seen -50 Celsius. That's Celsius. I'm not sure what that would. I think that's actually -50 Celsius, -50 Fahrenheit. I think that's where it intersects.
No, -40. I'm pretty
40.
sure.
You're right.
Yeah, Celsius and Fahrenheit never get that low for us, hardly. So I never think about it.
I'm 5 weeks of -25 up in Wisconsin.
I believe that.
My buddy lives in Superior, so not far from Canada.
I think I've seen
That's about what I get.
-3.
The Midwest.
Yeah.
That was up here.
-3. Oh my god.
But
Yeah.
that was Fahrenheit.
That's so warm.
So
No, that's just warm. That's t-shirt weather.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
Oh,
not. No, it's
man.
not.
25 to 30 in Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's
Fahrenheit.
about what I get there. That's about what I get up in
I
New
was in
Brunswick in
Fort Mac
Ontario.
once, and it was -50.
Oh,
That was the
Too
coldest
cold
I've
to
ever
snow.
experienced. Yeah, the bus that was coming to take us out of the camp broke down on the way because it was too cold.
no, the old co-host on here used to talk about -35 Celsius. He'd be working in the oil field or doing something
Yeah.
of that nature up in Canada, and that was always something I was like,
Yeah, they don't shut it down unless it's like over -40 without a wind chill. And when it's like -50 like that day, they go to work. They go outside for like 5 minutes, do pretty much nothing, and then go back and warm up for like half an hour.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, but you can't. I went outside for a cigarette, and like I took 2 puffs and threw my cigarette away and went back inside. I was like, "Fuck this!" Like, it is way too cold.
You
Oh,
inhale
man.
through your nose, and all of your mucus crystallizes instantly.
Yeah, like instant.
I've been the coldest I've ever
Or
been in was
flex
like
on your
-5, and that happened. Yeah.
Really?
It
Oh
just
yeah.
flex on your mustache.
Yeah, it
Oh
does.
yeah, it's just
It
Put
gets
an ice
sharp.
bomb under your nose.
we weren't
You
allowed
can-
those though because we're in the oil field. But yeah,
It's a really unique feeling.
You can feel it in the back of your nose and then your throat. It's sharp, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
to give you
Yeah.
headaches.
Yeah, because I was when I experienced -5, I was in my car living out here in the winter, and I woke up in the morning and there was like this like foggy hazy kindness in the back of my truck, and then there was icicles hanging down from my condensation from my breath, and I took one breath in and it's just that like.
Sharp.
It's just it's that like sharp. Yeah, it's really weird. It's strange.
Winter's a really interesting one when it comes to how you spend your energy. I think that's the biggest thing with winter, because you need to move to stay warm, but it comes down, and I don't know if Dank and Voltage would agree, if especially with the colder weathers there, it comes down to the terrain heavily, because if you're in mountainous terrain, you're going to be expending way more energy to make that movement. So whatever you're doing, you really have to plan your path as best as possible, and knowing how to navigate terrain towards civilization is a key factor of that. Following rivers is one of the classics. You follow a river, you'll find civilization eventually. That's one thing I've always kept in mind with winter survival, is if I was in mountainous terrain, I would just go low to the rivers personally and try to navigate that. And at the very least, try to find a cove or something. But there's always that risk of, finding a bear or.
Well, and you can end up
in
in a cold sink or a wind. It depends on terrain, but especially in wintertime, it's really dangerous, because if you end up too low or in a certain point where wind is funneling cold air into a low point, you can get a cold sink.
Yeah, so that's now that I'm like saying it out loud too. You don't want to go too low. Definitely keep it within. Well, it's just the general moisture that's coming off of that river too.
And this depends on your own decision as to whether or not you're prioritizing self-rescue or straight like life. Because I know I know people have heard about this a lot, is that like sweating in the wintertime is the thing that you do not.
Hell no.
that's why
Do
you
not
want to
sweat.
thermals.
I feel like that's the thing you would want to think about as you're doing anything in survival, especially in the winter, is this worth the sweat it could potentially create? Like, should I do this, or should I it's like you got to do things slowly, and you got to really think, like, is this sweat going to be worth it? And half the time it's not.
That's why.
And also you get
thermals.
thermals are good, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
they
Well,
got the
ones that can
whistle.
breathe and keep you dry. You also got to think about getting dirty out there, and especially in the Arctic conditions. If you're getting greasy and you're getting nasty, you got to find some way to clean yourself, because that layer of grease and sweat and dirt, filth that you have on your body is actually going to keep that heat from staying within you. It's gonna keep you cold. You're gonna lay in your sleeping bag at night, especially if you're sleeping with your clothes on. You should take your clothes off. You should sleep naked in your sleeping bag.
Keep your clothes in the bag, though.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, you could do that. If you have somewhere nice to dry them out and air them out, that's even better.
Yeah.
You usually want. I'd take your clothes and put them in your sleeping bag 10 minutes before you're supposed to wake up, and then it's gonna feel nice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Other than that, keep them dry. Staying clean is huge, though. You don't want that grease on you because it's gonna keep you freezing in your sleeping bag. It's gonna keep you cold, like while you're wearing your clothes.
It's as if you were red from sweat.
Yeah,
But you're
exactly.
One piece of equipment I want to mention right now, I don't have it on me, but this is one thing I would carry with me in search and rescue wherever I would go at any time. But this is a huge piece of gear that can make a huge difference inside of a winter survival scenario. Would be a moderately sized, well, you know, like an average sized tarp, where one side is reflective, waterproof and reflective, because you can build and bright, like orange or blue, or don't get a green one. I mean, green is cool, but you want to be visible. You want to be visible. Like have your shelter be as overt as it can be, because you're most likely to be in your shelter, so you're most likely to be found by it. Because in a winter scenario, I would gear more towards trying to stay put and trying to keep warm rather than self-rescue.
Yeah, there is a value of waiting for weather to clear up.
Yeah.
Before you make a move. I would definitely say that. Like if you're in a windstorm, definitely shouldn't be moving. You definitely, I mean, in my opinion, I would try to look for a barrier, dig that out, spend your energy digging something out and making it habitable as best as possible. And carrying candles is another thing that could really save your life.
Small sand batteries.
Well, sand batteries are heavy.
True.
That's the problem. You wouldn't be able to necessarily
carry them in a vehicle, though.
Yeah, sure.
Like getting trapped in the Sierra in a snowstorm or something,
Yeah, and that's another thing. If you're stuck and you're on a roadway, like,
because I ain't hiking in the woods by myself.
Sometimes the best situation is warming up your car and just staying hunkered down. Definitely.
See, and as a pilot, I also considered survival in varying terrains that you fly over. Because from here, if I go east 500 miles, I'm in the middle of the Salt Lake Desert. I could fly north 500 miles, and I'm in the middle of the forested area you guys live in, Cameron. So I mean, you think about. Plus, you can't carry a lot of weight in an aircraft, so you have to consider weight as a factor too in your survival gear. So, it's something that if you're not a pilot, you don't really think about. But as a pilot, you could, make a decision to go up to visit you, and then make a decision to go over to Salt Lake City, and it's two different climates. And if you put the plane down somewhere, most aircraft have an emergency locator transmitter, so that they know where to come and look for you, or at least the crash site. So staying with your craft is beneficial if you put it down in the wilderness on an aircraft. But if nobody knows you're out there and you went out on a whim and didn't tell anybody, that's a whole nother situation. And then I don't know about sitting and waiting for somebody would serve you well.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, it depends on if someone's looking for you or not, too. Here's one I kind of want to open up to the floor while we're talking about winter and shelter. And I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about fire on end in a little bit, but how do you guys feel about, like, through your experience and your training, how do you guys feel about hatchet versus saw? Of course, ideally, you'd want to have both, but how do you guys feel about some of in the context of winter? Would you prefer hatchet or saw?
Well, I already
shelter.
told you about my bow saw.
That's true. The spin saw. I keep a spin saw in both my. Well, I used to. I need to get them back in there. But no, I'm a big believer in the Sven saw. Would highly recommend.
Mm-hmm.
It's light and it can. Dude, the Sven saw, because it's got that perfect. Because even this, this saw is pretty decent. It's light and it's okay. It's got okay teeth. But the Sven saw has such aggressive teeth for cutting like timber and logs that it's so much faster, and you use so much less energy than you use when you're using this folding saw. But this folding saw is light. And small. It's packable.
Yeah, I think the material of the saw could definitely make the saw a more viable option, because it depends on the teeth wear. Because in my mind, I feel like I'd expend more energy trying to sharpen those teeth individually if it was a prolonged situation versus a hatchet where I could just kind of grab a hard rock generally just get it roughly, you can rough it. Then you don't need the fine-tunedness of a saw.
You can just get a lot of shit done with a hatchet, like.
It's true. It's like you got to think about how many things can you use each of your tools for.
Personally, I'd use a hatchet because you can use it as a hammer too, and that's something that you can't necessarily do with a saw. Yeah, no, I'm a hatchet man personally. I think even a pick shovel, or sorry, a shovel axe. Shovel axes are.
I think a saw would be able to build a better shelter. However, a hatchet or an axe would be ideal for making fire quickly.
Yeah.
It's also a weapon, and it's also something you can use for preparing game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and the other thing to consider too is that this hatchet, if you hold it, if you choke up on it, now it's a knife.
Yeah.
So you have a blade, you can do so much with a blade.
Yeah.
Versus a saw that does one thing.
You could skin an animal with that.
Well, yeah, if you try to use the saw as self-defense, sure, it might hurt something depending on what it is, but you're going to catch those teeth on whatever you're trying to hit. And that's going to, especially if it's got hair.
Now, if you're cutting bone, that's different.
Yeah, it's great for it's got selective qualities that having both is the ideal situation.
Having both is ideal.
Right. And a gerber. And a multi-tool.
Well, knowing your strengths, knowing your strengths, if you're a bigger person, you're going to have a easier time, trying to tear down a big branch that you've hatcheted into. Maybe you have to hatchet less, but maybe expending that energy to break those branches is going to be more than it's worth to just keep hatcheting at it. So I don't know. It's that's where conditioning is a big factor too. People have health conditions. If you have a heart problem and you're out there, and you're already stressed and you have adrenaline, you might be struggling to get up some mountains or trying to keep your bearings on this slippery terrain. Yeah, I know at least in the Sierra Nevadas when it's icy and you go down the Feather River, that it's a really, really easy spot to fall and break your spine. Break your neck,
fall in the river and drown.
You're dead. Especially if you're injured, and that is something I want to specify with following water. It is smart sometimes to just make a educated guess and move away from the water if that terrain is too dangerous. Trying to hike down a waterfalls terrain, that's a very bad idea. Typically, you always want to go around.
One thing that does not get talked about when talking about traveling and self-rescue in the context of survival is something that's actually incredibly dangerous that can happen very easily, is where, and this actually almost happened to Les Stroud, Survivor Man, if you guys are familiar with him. He's one of the ultimate resources on true survival. He's very knowledgeable and very smart, but something that can happen very easily that is where you're traveling, and say you're traveling downhill, and it can be easier to travel downhill. And so let's say you're traveling, trying to get to a certain point, you travel downhill, and you reach a point where you can't go down any farther without injuring yourself. And then you look back up and you have no energy to go back up to where you were, or it's such a technical climb at this point that you were able to climb down, but climbing up might be infeasible. And now you're stuck. You're truly stuck. That is something that is very risky, especially in terrain like what we have out in like the, because I remembered being afraid of this in search and rescue a couple times where, I mean, of course we had some rope support, but out in those mountainous hilly regions and where the travel is possible, it's not a straight up mountain. It's a very steep incline terrain. You can end up stuck in those. There's a word for it. I can't quite remember the word for it off the top of my head, but where you just end up in this position where there's nowhere else for you to go. And now, yeah, I know that is something to be cautious of while traveling. In
End of the road.
Yeah.
See, I try not to go out anywhere alone in wilderness anymore. It was fun when I was younger, but I try to have vehicles around me whenever I go anywhere out and about.
Oh my God, Thor.
Yeah, man, the cone menace. He just sneezed like 10
the
times.
cone
out
is
there.
king. No.
Even allergies are getting to him, man.
No.
Oh, a big guy.
I've been giving Rosie Apoquel because she's been itching like crazy.
Yeah,
Puppy
man.
eyes.
Thor's hilarious. What you doing, man? How you doing?
Cone of shame.
Yeah, he keeps biting his butt.
He looks so happy.
Such a Thor problem to be having. He's like,
Well, yeah, and like I guess the dogs helped him get his cone off the other day.
oh my God.
And they ran around for 30 minutes. Yeah,
I got my coat off.
yeah, they teamed up and started pulling on it, and no one noticed. And
Oh
then
my
they
God.
They bit his butt again. So dogs, man. But
I mean, does he have like worms or something? I mean,
No, it's just a scab.
oh,
Just, you know how dogs
just
are.
itchy. Yeah, I get it.
Itchy, weird. I don't know.
Rosie gets
Weird.
allergies in the summer. I have her on Apoquel, which is an anti-itch pill. And I give her half a pill, and I got to hide it in a treat.
Oh, man. Well, I didn't want to derail, but
It works really well, though. She was scratching herself like crazy. You guys saw it when I brought her up there. She was scratching.
yeah,
Her eyes were all puffy, and now she's doing a lot better.
That's good.
that's good. Yeah, that is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else? Or sorry, is there anything? I guess fire is the other really crucial thing.
Yeah. I kind of wanted, we'll talk about fire. I kind of wanted to mention my personal thoughts through experience in my terrain on saw versus hatchet.
Oh yeah,
Real
yeah,
quick.
absolutely.
Because I agree that the hatchet is going to be a more useful tool. You're going to be able to do so much more with it. I think if you're doing anything long term, yeah, hatchet all the way. But this is like whether or not you have it or not, because it's heavy. You got to imagine, you don't know when you're going to end up. And this is a lot geared towards the average person who wants to go out into the woods. You're not going to know when you're going to be in a survival situation. And so, maybe you leave this at home because it's heavy and you just want to go on a day hike or whatever. Who knows where you're going? And so now you don't have it. That's why I tend to prefer to just throw a saw in my backpack and just have it in there all the time, because then I like the saw because you expend less energy to use it. And the caveat is that it has to be paired either with a hatchet if you have the weight capacity for that, or pair it with a knife. With these items, in my terrain, you can survive. You can do quite a bit. You can build shelter. You can cut, you still have your blade to cut things. And this whole setup weighs less than the hatchet combined.
It is true.
And
And you
it's
can
all
make
about
a spear out of a knife too. That's another thing.
It's all about
if you
expending
have
energy.
careful.
And to me, the biggest things that you want to get covered as the average person who might find themselves in an unfortunate situation, the first things that you would want to cover are warmth and shelter. And then, water. Yes, water is a constant. I just find less issue in my terrain. it's water is more abundant where I am. It's easier to locate a source of water. Of course, packed in water. That's the caveat too.
I was thinking more carrying a filtration device so that you don't get sick from the local water.
Yeah, I need to get my life straw. Highly recommend life straw or some kind of a
something like that. And it's very lightweight. You don't have to pack water with you if you have a filtration device that'll take harmful pathogens out.
So,
yes, that should be with us on every one of these. Water's vital everywhere.
Water is vital.
Water will be a topic that comes up, and I think
we'll bring
portrays. That up. I mean, the only thing that's going to be crazy is the coastal. Coastal water is different.
Yeah.
Here's a good graph for you. Days without food, or you could go weeks without food. Days without water, but only minutes without air. So
yeah,
that's crazy.
That's a crazy one. You had to think about.
Something to think about when you're in Arctic climate, if I may. Having people think, oh yeah, there's snow everywhere. It's so easy to get water. It's actually not easy to get water because it is very cold outside, and you need to turn that snow. And also, here's another point to think about. Don't try to turn snow into water. Try to turn ice into water. Turning snow isn't going to do anything but burn your pot and give you like maybe a sip. You're going to fill a pot full of snow. It's going to take probably 4 hours to melt it because the snow has no contact with the pan. It's very airy. It has lots of air inside of it. Ice is better. Always melt ice for water, not snow.
Yeah, that's a very good tip.
Dude, I was gonna say it's funny that you mentioned this because I've been in this situation because when I was living in my car, I ran out of water, but there was snow on the ground, so and it took me a long time.
It took forever, right?
Because I got a little bit of I was able to finally get because I remember I just went and scooped up a bunch of snow and put it on my pan and went and did something else and come back and I've got like that much. But once that much started boiling, adding more snow made it go quicker. But I kept
if you had some water,
it took me so long to get that freaking ramen going, dude. It was crazy.
You just need like a little bit of contact on the pan, you know, like it's just full of air.
Yeah, no, I think eating snow. I mean, a lot of people know to not eat snow. I think eating snow is a huge misnomer. I mean,
especially the yellow snow.
Yeah. I would say if you are dying of dehydration, then yes, eat snow. But other than that, try to boil it. Try to do anything else. And the ice, I like that. I never thought of that.
All you need is 2 minutes. Yeah, it's 2 minutes. At a rolling boil, that's more than safe.
You know, that's another piece of equipment that I just thought of that is huge. If you think about it for winter time, would be a pot.
Yeah.
A pot. You can boil water, melt snow, boil food, because if you can catch any small game, you're going to want to boil that.
Even just a Boy Scout camp kit.
Yeah.
You know, camp cook kit. Boy Scout camp cook kit is good enough for, a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like that little pan that's in the 2 fork and knife or whatever.
Yeah.
The spork.
The sport.
Oh, and you're right too, Chad. Boiling that is the best thing to do. To always boil all your food. It's the safest way, and it's also the most nutritious way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you keep it in the pot.
Yeah, and you're doubling down because since you're boiling it, you're also hydrating yourself. It's just better all around.
Yeah.
Sure. And don't eat straight snow because it cools you down before it'll
lowers your body temperature.
Enough water.
You get barely anything out of it.
Yeah, if you don't know that fact and you're going into a winter environment, you shouldn't be there. You've gone too far in, bro.
Yeah.
You're thinking about eating snow and you're 38 or like, midlife crisis hiking trip? Yeah, no.
Because I'm in too deep and I'm trying to keep blood in my hands.
Oh, gosh. There's something on the lines of that. Yeah. So when you were talking about the hatchet, I did want to highlight something too. That knowing the weight of your gear matters.
Weight is huge.
If you really are someone who's in the city, is wanting to try to get out and experience the world, the weight of your gear matters in the sense that you really need to condition your body to environments where you'll be sustainable in making it to the locations you're trying to make it to. and this is if the trip goes to plan, general backpacking kind of experience, but if you're actually in that survival experience, maybe leaving the hatchet behind, trying to scout the area is best for you, because that's what your body can sustain at that moment.
Yeah.
Although I personally would condition myself to be able to defend myself generally anywhere I go. So if I couldn't carry something like a bat or a hatchet, I would feel ashamed. Because I mean, or I would feel, the better word is scared, because of the nature around you. You need a self-defense. In a situation.
One thing to consider about cougars, because all my wilderness defense ideas have to do with cougars, because that's the thing I'm most likely to get attacked by. But one thing to think about, if we're looking at hatchets and bats versus a cougar, if a cougar wants to kill you, it's going to close the distance immediately and try to take you to the ground. And now you're at a disadvantage. That's why if you're worried about cougars, one of the best weapons is a small folding knife, because if you can do anything to make that cougar think that killing you is not worth it. And I don't care who you are, if you were a cougar and having that going into you repeatedly, I think it would change its mind. And then of course, best option's a gun, but
yeah, and like I do agree. That's kind of where I was trying to get to that.
Right.
There are other options, and trying to not just take the big stick, but it's everywhere you go.
Yeah. Carving a spear for yourself is good too, because that can help keep distance. Yeah. Between you and an animal too.
Yeah. And I think everyone can attest to this. Some good paracord I would recommend paracord, because it's just how
we could talk about the 5 C's. Do you guys know the 5 C's of survival? I think there's 5.
What? Cords?
Cordage? Cutting?
Yeah, cutting. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so cordage, cutting, container.
Cooking. Yeah,
cleanliness.
Exactly.
Cleanliness. I think there's one more.
Clothing.
Yeah.
Right.
I think those are the 5. I like that list anyway. I don't care if that's the official one, but that can be our 5 C's of survival. Cordage, cutting, container, clothing. There was one more. Cleanliness. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's definitely important to have some sort of twine.
Yeah.
And that's something I find very, very, very difficult to make out of thin air in winter.
Yeah.
Because fibers don't want to really work together. They don't want to be flexible. They want to be rigid and snap.
Right. And that's the thing with the 5 C's of survival, is that those things that we just mentioned are the most difficult to actually craft, or the most difficult to actually procure in the wilderness, those 5 things. Because a lot of other things can be made, crafted, built, found. But those things are the things that are the hardest to recreate.
Hey there, Chad. I looked up the 5 C's. It's cutting, combustion, cover, container, cordage.
Nice. Okay.
Because it's not rope, it's cordage.
Cordage. Okay.
And cooking.
Yeah. Nice.
That's a good point. Yeah, you got to have a pot.
No, thank you for looking that up. Yeah.
Yeah, no, what was the official 5? Did you look that up, you said?
Yeah, let me get that again. It was cutting, combustion, cover, container, cordage. Oh yeah, container, that's going to be like your pots and pans and something to store food with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. Combustion, yeah.
Yeah, no, that checks out.
And covers shelter and clothing, and yeah.
I'll be right
back.
No,
I like it.
And
I remember being on my
water as well.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember being on my engineer training, and they absolutely lit one guy up because he kept calling it rope. It's cordage. It's not rope. It's cordage.
And that could be different sizes too.
Absolutely.
From
Yeah.
twine to mountain climbing rope to something you can pull a boat out of the water with, an anchor chain, an anchor
Yeah,
rope.
you got to know what rope you need for the job. That goes with chains. That goes with straps.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean,
I
for
haul heavy
shelter.
equipment, so straps.
Oh, do
and
you?
chains.
I'm a heavy equipment operator. You haul heavy equipment?
Yeah, I'm an operator. Number one, I hauled heavy equipment because I didn't have an operating job at the time. So, but I've loaded sea containers onto and off of trains before.
That's very cool.
I was CE
Yeah.
as well, combat engineer. I trained with the Army and the Marine
You're a
Corps.
combat engineer? I'm a combat engineer.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's why I learned to run heavy equipment.
Yeah, that's where I ran. Dude, we got the exact same job. We got the exact same life. You and I. We just met.
Oh man. Oh yeah. Dude, don't get Jeff started.
No, you know what? No, I
he's
actually
got
just
so many
started.
stories.
They got me. They got me doing all sorts of.
nuclear bombers.
Sorry, what?
I plowed snow around nuclear bombers.
Oh my god, that's sick.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Force.
what were you saying, Voltage?
Oh no, I'm just saying, like that sounds like very similar to my career. I joined as a combat engineer. I did a few years as a field troop, and then ended up in the heavy equipment cell. Very fortunate for that. And then yeah, I've been doing good work with them. But it's looking like I'm more of a truck guy now. They got me using the trailers, the trucks, the 18 wheelers, the 12 wheelers, and all that. But all I want to do is operate the bulldozer, man. That's all I want to do. I just want to go. Rum, rum.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I want to do the
man.
anti-tank ditch, and they won't let me.
I used to run a compactor at a landfill as well. D9 dozer and a compactor compactor.
D9, yeah.
Four wheels with the points on them. It's like 103,000 pounds worth of compactor.
Holy shit! I've seen those John Deere D10s. They're pretty big, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some big equipment in the States. That's for sure.
Actually, the bigger it is, usually the easier it is to operate.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, you don't get mired down by the mud. You can't be stopped. You're just like, as long as you're doing good cuts, right? You're making those. Yeah, you can't be stopped. You're just like too big for the soil to stop you.
But yeah, plus like a little piece of equipment, you make a little cut, and then all of a sudden you drive into it, and then your whole cut goes.
Yeah,
you
and your blades all
angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to make faster adjustments on your controls with a smaller piece of machinery.
Dozer's not easy, eh?
Yeah, it's easy if you know the techniques. You drop the blade and then you raise it just a little bit.
Yeah. You ever done the dozer dance?
The dozer dance? What's that?
It's just called the dozer dance. You walk up to your ground and you put your hands out in front of you like you're about to grab something in front of you. You know what I mean? And you kind of like, you imagine that's your blade and you keep that level as you walk forward onto your ground. You're about to make a level pass. It just helps visualize for me. I'm just a little...
Oh, man.
No, I never had to do that.
Well, is there anything in the winter terrain that we want to touch on before we move forward?
Go prepared.
Are we going to talk about fire involved with winter, or are we going to have fire be its own topic?
No, we do need to talk about fire. Good on you for that.
Yeah.
So I did want to mention one thing with the candle. If you have good cover, a tarp or whatnot, even a jacket, you can, a lighter as well. You can hold that under there and create enough warmth to sustain body heat. So as long as you're not necessarily sitting on moisture, that's a key fact. Like you want to try to dig yourself to ground level if you can.
Yeah, stay dry.
Mm-hmm.
And dig a cold sump. Dig a small area in the ground below your shelter. That's the thing to talk about too, shelters, especially in these Arctic climates. You could build yourself a quinzhee. Those are pretty easy. Igloos are more of a permanent structure.
Yeah.
Snow caves are fun. Yeah, my go-to winter shelter that I would construct and that I taught, because I used to teach I used to teach the winter shelter building class and the winter fire building class for my search and rescue. When we'd have new people come in, I would do those classes. And the way that I would build my shelters in the winter in my environment is I would have my tarp, which has a reflective side and a bright side, and find a tree, dig yourself out sort of a basin, have your shelter be flat and low. That helps keep moisture where you are instead of if it's too steep, your moisture. I'm having trouble with angles. There we go. If it's too steep, your heat is it's going to funnel out. It's going to want to funnel out a lot more than a nice low shelter. And when you build these low shelters, it spreads out your tarp, so you're more likely to be seen from above from somebody passing over in a helicopter or a plane, whatnot. But the real trick to the low shelter too is because of course you have sort of a basin where you can sort of get a heat well. It really holds heat a lot more, and that low design, if you build your fire, you have a way to get in and out of your shelter, but having that fire right there just still helps put warmth inside of your shelter without making it too in the way or too difficult to be able to move around your camp. And the reason I trained this particular shelter for my search and rescue crew was if you're surviving with multiple people, if you have that low shelter, you can fit a lot of people into your shelter, because that was my plan. And there was one time when I almost had to spend the night out in the snow with a whole crew, with a whole search and rescue team. And what you want to do, you got to get comfortable and sardine. That's what I would tell them. I'd say, guys, we got to sardine. Yeah. So that's how I would build my shelters in my environment in the wintertime. Low, dugout, and it's quick because it's fast, because I don't want to expend hardly any energy on it. I want to make the fire. Well, I want to make the fire so I can warm up while I'm building the shelter. But I was able to build that low hanging shelter. Like, my record for fire going in the winter with a ferro rod fire shelter, I had another guy. I had 2 people for this. That's the caveat here, was I was able to get a whole shelter, a whole camp set up in about 30 minutes with fire. But I had 2 people. That's the thing. But
yeah, hands are good.
Hands are good.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Multiple Germans.
Voltage, you got to head out.
Yeah, man, this has been my time, but I didn't mean to cut you off there, Chad.
Oh, no worries.
No, Chad's got time, but the reason I wanted to stop is, what did you want to say on the mental?
Man.
Yeah,
you know what? Actually, I got
that.
something huge to say about this, because so I've been in like some situations where I'm like, okay, yeah, you need to survive, and I'm a very optimistic guy. I try to keep a smile on your face. That can be huge. You got to smile to yourself. You got to tell yourself literally out loud that you're doing good and you're gonna be fine. You know, stuff like that.
I'm gonna make stories. It, or this is a badass way to die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just be cynical about it, right? Just be like, you know, because you're gonna be in a really shitty situation, and you know, like in some cases, and sometimes you might be in like beautiful Oregon, and you might have some like small game to cut down, and you might have some like fresh water streams to drink from, and you might be absolutely fine. But you might be in the Arctic, and there's no trees in the Arctic, and there's no living things in the Arctic. And you know what I mean? Like you're gonna have to figure out like how to keep going. And especially if you have people with you, there's always one person in your group that's gonna be your doomsayer, your doom foresayer. He's gonna be like, "Oh God, guys, we're not gonna make it." You know, like that guy. You need to tell that guy to shut the hell up. You need to tell him to shut the hell up. Like that's it. That's the end of the story. It doesn't matter if you're not going to make it. You need to keep trying. You need to keep putting your effort forward. Start sulking, and you're just not helping yourself.
No, that's no way to be. That's interesting. I like hearing that perspective, Voltage, and you've been great having on the show.
It's been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
Oh yeah.
No, we really appreciate it, and hopefully you come back for future adventures with us, we'd love that. And we do this pretty regularly, so.
Cool. I'll be in contact with you. You can get Dank to drop me one of your numbers.
Oh yeah, Dank knows
He's
all,
really
man. Well, take care and enjoy your Sunday.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, guys. Have a good one.
Take care, both.
See you later, homie.
Thanks, man.
Nice.
All right. So, Chad, please, your fire talking. I'm sorry to cut you off. But.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I fire building was always one of my favorite parts of survival and one of my favorite things to train people on in search and rescue. And one thing to really think about is, because even just doing that, it's like, if you have this, just a lighter, you can do quite a bit with it. And one thing I did want to mention is something people don't think about, but is so important and so simple, is having just 2 sources of ignition. As in, I like to do, like when I would go out, I would always have a lighter on me, and honestly, keep it in your back pocket. If you keep a lighter in your back pocket when you're out in the woods, yep, it's super. Because if you don't have this and you get lost in the woods, you're going to be pissed. You're not going to be happy, because with this and a knife, you can start a fire pretty quickly with just this and a knife. Having a saw is great. Having a hatchet is great, but I'm more talking to the average person who might be going out into the woods. Have a lighter, have a knife, and have a second source of ignition on you if you can. And I like that to be a combination of a lighter and a ferricium rod, so like a flint striker, like a flint steel style method, because that can be your backup. You can still make it with that, but carry a lighter. Don't have your flint steel style striker be your only source, because it takes more work and more effort to make a fire than it does with this.
Yeah, if you're going any extended distance from your vehicle, and really planning the day in the forest, like at least that's the bare minimum kit.
But yeah, and honestly, for me personally and in my environment, but right here, that is a survival kit. You can do quite a bit with these 2 items. This can get you out of a lot of situations. That's what I've found in my experience.
Straight up.
Is having those things, and
or at least get you through them until somebody finds you.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a lot of what I'm talking about when I talk about survival, because that's a lot of the experience I've had, because I've had to look for people who I've found dead because they didn't have things like this. They didn't have water. They didn't have a knife. They didn't have any source of fire to be able to get them through the night. Because out here in Oregon, it gets pretty cold, but it's like, we can talk about negative temperatures all we want until you're trying to sleep or you're trying to just exist in rain, snow. All these things are detractors to your morale and to your physical well-being, but just being able to have a fire can get you through those situations and get you through that. That's why I feel like fire and shelter are the pinnacles to surviving an ordeal. Extended survival is its own topic. And extended survival is very important to be thinking of if you find yourself in a situation like that. But a lot of my context and knowledge is seeing how people either failed or didn't fail. But a lot of the people that I found out in the woods didn't make it, unfortunately, even though we're just in Oregon. But things to think about. And another thing I wanted to mention, I'll leave it there, because I want to hear what other people have to say about fire.
Well, yeah, and don't worry. I mean, we have other terrains. This is mostly to do with winter fire making.
Right. Yeah.
So I think we've covered that. There was just one tip that I personally have if you're on like a motorcycle or something, but this isn't typically what you are doing in the winter. But if you're out there and I don't know, I only say motorcycles because I'm not sure if it's the same with typical engine blocks in a car. It probably is so, but there's magnesium on that block and you can scrape that off with a blade. and use that as a fire starter in a pinch. That can help raises the heat of that fire. So when you do make that combustion, then there's a higher chance that your fire can catch.
Yeah. Yeah.
It needs to be pretty hot to combust, though.
Right.
It does need to be pretty hot to combust.
That goes.
So
go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
It's definitely like a catch-22. It's not a fail-safe, but it can help add to your chances of a successful fire.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that goes hand in hand with having that flint steel backup, because a lot of the flint steel backups you can buy have magnesium on them. And I've started a lot of fires using magnesium. It is really fun. And my best advice to that, if you're going to try to do that, is you got to get a pretty good sized pile of it. It's worth it, because it's gonna whoosh, and then it's gonna go out. But having that but that's the thing with the magnesium, is that it wants to. That's why it's good to have a flint steel striker and your lighter, because if you use the lighter, and you can use the magnesium and the lighter. But no, the magnesium, finding magnesium on engine block or having it on your ferro rod, magnesium's a really good back pocket thing to have. Like, right, it's a good material for that. I always do highly recommend it, especially that's the other thing I wanted to mention about fire building too. Practice, train. Allow yourself only a lighter and a knife. Allow yourself only so much, and see how quickly or how effectively you can get a fire started with what you might be able to keep in your back pockets.
Here's a tip on the magnesium. If you know of a machine shop that'll machine magnesium, you can go pick up the filings off they just throw them out. They don't even recycle them, because there's a lot of air in there. They can't, but you put them in a baggie and just carry them with you. They're lightweight and already ground up. So go find a machine shop.
Yeah, another honorable mention. I almost completely forgot about this. A fantastic fire starting resource that is available to everyone is dryer lint.
Yeah, and wax.
If you just get a little baggie of dryer lint and throw that in your backpack, you can. It is. Dryer lint is
cool
also,
fire starters I've seen.
Dryer lint is also really good if you have dryer lint on you and you need to make a friction fire for some reason. Dryer lint is really good for getting that coal to get going. But yeah, dryer lint is one of the ultimate.
Hopefully made out of cotton rather than polyester products.
Right. That's another really good fire starter thing that's really easy to make, to have on you, is cotton balls soaked in Vaseline.
Right.
Cotton balls soaked in Vaseline, because all you have to do then is you just pull the cotton ball apart. Because once it's soaked in Vaseline and really in there, you pull it apart and you get, we called it in search and rescue, we called it troll doll hair, where when you pull it apart, it kind of strands out, and then you squish it back together with all of the strands pointing upwards. And that takes a spark from a striker, or of course, a lighter, takes it like nobody's business. And that is a really good way to be able to get your fire going. And that stuff works when it's wet out. But dryer lint, magnesium, cotton balls. Another technique to think about. This is a really good one.
Easy to carry.
Yeah. This is another good one to think about when you're in winter time, is doing feather sticks. And they don't have to be super great, because if you watch a bushcraft channel, they've got the razor sharp bushcraft knife, and they can make those like crazy feather sticks. Those are great, but it doesn't have to be too crazy, because you can use your lighter. Because if you're trying really hard to find a source of tinder, you can take your knife, because I mentioned that you want to have a lighter and a knife. Those are your fire tools. Because if you can just shave and keep it on the stick, but if you get those flaps hanging off, those will, even in, because when wood gets really cold, it gets harder to combust because it constricts. But when you allow it that, it'll take that flame really well, and then you can move the stick around, and it's a lot easier to get that whole stick burning, and then you can add on top of it as you go. But that's again why I think it's of paramount importance if you're going to be, if you is to just practice making fires when you have the opportunities. Just practice different techniques and concepts and get used to the fire science of it, because there's lots of nuanced science behind how fires behave, especially when you're trying to build them. And so getting more hands-on experience with what that flame's going to do as you add wood, where you add it, when you add it, how you add it, it just takes time and experience to really be able to keep a fire going reliably. So
I'll add to that the food aspect, where learn to cook over fire too, and do that frequently.
Yeah, because cooking over a fire it's not like cooking over a gas range or electric stove. It's very challenging. Yeah.
So I just thought of a Kahlua pork that I was going to do in the ground. So
I still think about that pork I had when we were over there. Dude, that was so good. So good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn how to cook over fire. That's also key.
Yeah.
That's a tool you can take with you up here rather than carrying in your pockets.
Well, and that's something that I need to work on, because I've built fires a lot, but I have not cooked over fires nearly as much as I should. I've of course boiled water in fires and things like that, but like, and I think I've cooked eggs maybe, maybe bacon. I think I cooked bacon, but yeah, I need to practice that more and really practice making various things over a fire and keeping that temperature good. I do know that one of the best fire building techniques for cooking would be a teepee fire, kind of like this, because that's going to end up with a bed of coals the fastest.
Right.
And then of course, because the different styles. Yeah, I could talk about the different styles really quick. Yeah.
You can put up a pot hanger pretty easly over teepee fire as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just 3 sticks to hang a pot from.
Right. Yeah.
Or a little grill. I carried a bunch of stuff on my motorcycle. So nice. It was motorcycle camping kind of gets you in the idea of paring down to minimum.
Right. Yeah, you really got to think about weight when you're doing that.
So I took it to the extreme where I'm carrying my own espresso coffee maker. It's very small in plastic, so it's lightweight, Right. The heaviest part was the bag of coffee that went with it. bag of grounds,
Mm-hmm.
So, imagine carrying everything that you possibly could for short distances as a survival carry-on bag, just keep it loaded, ready to go. Just grab it, survival in the home during extended power outages. If you I've got a generator, but you got to have gas for that. And at a certain point, you're going to run low or run out of gas. So, also even with a generator, my furnace doesn't work. I can't power the thermostat to tell my furnace to turn the gas on to light it.
Right.
So I'm with it in the wintertime. If the power goes out, it can get pretty cold around here. So I'm working on these sand batteries. So that's for me survival, even though it's in the home.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how it depends on your survival in general. Are you hiking out in the woods in the summertime or in the wintertime, or are you stuck in your home without power for a week or two without heat and stuff like that? So both are survival, but you have to look at them from different angles. So.
Exactly. No, that is a really good point. Is the concept of home survival, something I don't think about as much as I should, but
everybody should think about it. I mean, I've got plenty of dried food. I just add water, and even with a power outage for extended periods, the water is still going to come out of the faucet. because the power there, the water plant has big giant generators to pump the water. So I don't have to worry about that. It's just I got to worry about keeping warm enough and making sure that my plumbing doesn't freeze. So
Yeah.
Even for a couple of days, you get pretty darn cold.
What did I miss exactly? Like what terrain are we talking on?
We're still we were talking about fire building and practicing and training with your fire building. We talked a little bit about
the home stuff.
Yeah, and then we started talking about like home survival and looking at, because to me, I think some of the most important things to consider about home survival is, how am I going to stay warm? Well, actually, I think more importantly, because this applies to everywhere, how am I going to cook my food, and how am I going to stay warm?
Yeah.
I think those would be the biggest things to think about, and to create contingencies and plans for, as a homeowner or as a person who's living somewhere, create those contingencies for yourself to be able to be prepared to where I can still cook food and I can still stay warm.
Well, and you can never be too prepared.
Yeah.
Like
in my instance, keeping the house warm is higher priority. I can use your big lighter to light my gas stove and cook food. I have water that comes out of the faucet. It's just that keeping everything above freezing inside the house would be my main concern for survival. So even though I could pile on more and more and more clothes, it's survival of my surroundings as well as myself.
That is a really good way to put that for home survival of my surroundings. I need to maintain what I have, my camp. Yeah, no, that is a really good way to think of that.
Like hanging your food out in the woods so the bears don't get in it in your tent. I consider it a similar situation, so that I can continue to use my camp after the survival incident is over.
No, I agree.
Because I'm not walking around in the woods in the wintertime alone, that's for sure. I'm not. I'm not.
Wouldn't recommend it.
No.
I got a motorcycle, and it's been a long time since I even rode in the rain, so much less snow.
Well,
I have ridden a motorcycle in the snow. It's tricky.
I'm personally realizing how complex just one of these terrains is, And there's even more I'm thinking about, like hunting. You mentioned that, and snare traps. These are fairly universal too, but I would say the cold will affect the environment that you're making these traps in. That means ice is a factor. Maybe you're only able to find a big block of ice, but you could still use ice as a deadfall trap. There's definitely factors that you can use to your advantage. But in ice fishing, there's pros and cons to all of this. But also, do the dangers outweigh the benefits? That's something you always have to tell yourself. Are you really thinking about what you're about to do? Because if you get wet, you fall in, especially under ice, there's a really good chance you're not coming out.
Yeah. No,
especially if you're alone,
getting wet in a survival situation, getting soaked. Getting wet will happen. It's the woods. But getting soaked to me is when that's danger. I mean, we've all seen Bear Grylls stripped down naked. It's like, do what you want, but your first priority if you get wet is to be dry.
Is to not be wet.
Not be wet. Yeah. It's whether that means stripping or prioritizing your fire even more, or taking any step you can to try to be dry.
Right. Yeah, I could easily see that being a rookie mistake right there for someone.
Yeah.
Is they try to cross even a creek or a river, in the winter.
Yeah.
And they don't have any reliable means to start a fire or reliable resource to cross that way, or the knowledge of reliable resources. If you're just doing it to do it, you better have a plan, or it better be early enough in the day where temperatures aren't going to drop even more. It's definitely an ebb and flow. And then if you get your shoes wet, drying out shoes, it's not easy, man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and shoes are very important too. We could talk about shoes in the context of survival a lot as well. One thing I wanted to mention, Cameron, since we're talking about food gathering, and this especially applies in the wintertime, is the concept, because this is what I think of when I think of food and hunting, is there's two halves to it, which are passive and active. Passive food gathering would be things like certain types of fishing and especially trapping. You're setting something up that could potentially get you food that will operate while you're not actively present. It's passive. It's a potential. It might work, it might not, but you're not expending nearly as much energy as an active hunting method. And fishing can vary, because there's types of active fishing hunting and there's types of very passive fishing hunting. And then there's sort of the middle ground, which is conventional hook, line, sinker. That's in the middle.
Yeah.
Because it still takes up your time, but it doesn't take up your energy.
Yeah, like throwing a spear at fish is very possible, but it's
also very difficult. And so is trapping. Trapping is also very difficult as well. I think same thing with practicing your fires. Practice building traps. Practice that.
Snares are awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very passive. Once they're set up, you just keep checking them.
And then one thing we have to mention here on the lines of active hunting is we can look at firearms.
Oh, nice.
This, to me, and I'm pulling this out a little early, but if we really want to talk about the ultimate survival firearm, it's this. And this
There's
is
the
empty.
parachute survival gun as well, that's like all folded up in like a tiny little thing that weighs like nothing.
Yep.
And it's cleanable. I'm sure it's really easy to clean.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too to consider is that the folding one is really great. I know which one you're talking about, the Henry survival rifle. Those ones are great because they don't take up as much weight. They're packable. They shoot 22. That's the reason this gun to me is the ultimate survival firearm, is because it shoots 22. It's easy to pack in a lot of 22. This gun's really accurate. Sure. You can pack this gun in a backpack. Mm-hmm. But the Henry survival rifle, though, is going to be superior because it's a rifle.
Yeah.
No matter how you slice it, a rifle is going to be have more reliable accuracy than a pistol in the average person's hands. Mm-hmm. And you got to think about how many bullets do you have? Because in my mind, every one of those bullets that you decide to shoot should have the best chance of getting you food.
Yeah.
And a rifle is going to give you a better chance of getting that food because it's going to be easier to shoot accurately.
But in a pinch, you can use a 22 cartridge and use the powder inside.
Exactly. Because it's very easy to pull apart 22. All you need is a pair of pliers. Versus other bullets, it's much more difficult to get into them because of how they're made. But no, a 22 pistol like this is a very cost-effective, very weight-effective way to go. Like if someone were to really ask me what, well, I guess not. I just answered it. I would want a lightweight 22 rifle if I could have the perfect survival gun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, generally speaking, that's great. It's definitely a lot lighter than a 44.
Yeah, and that's in the context of winter and hunting.
And cost effectiveness, like you said, like
weight and efficiency and ease of use are the things you would want to think about first and foremost if you're going to be packing in a whole rifle or a whole pistol into your winter whatever activity is happening that you feel warrants, hey, I want to have a gun on me. I'd probably take a 22.
I think we're going to go ahead and move into the desert.
Let's do it.
I think desert terrain is going to be an interesting one to talk about because it's a battle. It's definitely a harsh landscape. We all know it's hard to find water in.
Yeah, I was going to say
that's going to be.
Yeah.
Oh, then go for it.
We just talked a lot about warmth and shelter. In the desert, it's water. Because in the winter, in those winter conditions, water, it is a huge concern, but it's less of a immediate concern. Whereas in the desert, water is an immediate concern.
And the
Yeah.
choices to find it and on site are far fewer than, say, in the mountains or the woods.
Yeah, no, and having layers, in the desert is an important factor, but not too much to where you're actively working against your own body.
Mm-hmm.
But keeping your perspirants and cloth, you can use that to sustain a little bit of moisture too, and at the very least help keep you cooler.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, if you're doing nights in the desert, it could get really cold.
Yes.
Depending on which desert you're in.
Unexpectedly. Yeah. Well, it is expected. It happens. It's how it works.
Death Valley is a sink, so it gets cold just because it's the lowest spot.
Yeah.
I mean, 41 miles away is the highest spot in the lower 48, so it's like it's not far for the cold air to go from the top of that mountain to the bottom of the Death Valley. So the best time to camp there is February and March, by the way.
Yeah, Death Valley's cool, man. I haven't ever really been there.
It wasn't
when
really
I was young, but
in February and March, a lot of wind.
Actually, I don't think I would have gone there.
Which state is Death Valley in again? I can't recall.
California.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's technically part of, I think, the same basin as Nevada.
Okay.
There's just one city, the main city that's in the heart of what they consider Death Valley National Park is in California.
Panamint Springs.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, there's this weird
Furnace Creek as well is in California.
There's like a population of 50 people there or something. They actually live there, but they also have some of the highest deaths over populace because people just can't handle the heat, man.
Interesting.
It's the health of. Yeah, I wouldn't want to live there. Let me put it that way. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Sounds like hell.
A lot of foreign tourists come just to experience the high heat. Like Germany and Europe especially. They come during the peak of the heat just to experience it. And a lot of them aren't ready for it.
How hot does it really get there on average?
On average,
120.
At least 120. The record I think is 136 or 138.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've heard it go to 126, 128, and higher than that.
In February at Furnace Creek, it was roughly 76 degrees at night, and in the 80s during the daytime in February, and then in March I did Panamint Springs in March, and it was windy as heck. The trees grow sideways because it's always windy through Panamint Springs.
Yeah. Well, let's see. How hot is Death Valley right now?
Let's see, June.
96.
I'd say it's at least over 100.
It says 96, but it's going in this week to 105.
It's about right.
But let's see. Hold on.
They call it Death Valley for a reason. Most people don't have enough water to cross with their horses.
Yeah, this seems more accurate. Right now it says 104.
It's about right.
Yeah, that seems more right. And it's going to at 12 p.m. 110, 118, 121 at 5 p.m.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, geez,
105 at 10 p.m., dude.
Or 10 a.m. 104 at 10 a.m.
It's insane. I mean, you imagine a heat or a little AC trying to.
Could you imagine packing your family up in Germany and flying there just to experience the heat?
Dude. Yeah, I wouldn't leave the van.
No.
Be like, I'm keeping this thing running, man.
I wonder if those buildings out there even have an attic.
Dude. I doubt it.
I would imagine. I don't. I've never been there or looked at any pictures, but I would imagine that they probably have a lot of like low buildings. I'm not sure.
Well, the original, the native buildings were all adobe, but the all the newer construction is they have an attic, peaked roof, wood construction.
Yeah, because I know that there's a certain concept of that the attic can keep your house cooler because it's holding a lot of. It's like the heat just sort of holds there. It's like it creates an actual heat barrier between the sun hitting your roof and your actual living space. I know that is a factor, but
there's reflective roofing shingles you can get too that will reflect a lot of the sunlight.
That would make sense.
I put them on my house down in Sacramento. So
I never thought of that. It's like you could I could take my same tarp that I use in the wintertime and create a shade shelter by flipping it over so that the reflective side is facing away from me. That I never thought of doing that, but
this is like an example of something you could see in Death Valley.
Interesting.
Very, very like
it's a town of rhyolite.
Like stereotypical West, old Western style. Like they have a lot of the plank front. I'm not sure what you call that because I just don't know the actual architectural terms of, but very, very it's like Virginia City.
Yeah.
It's in the same style of that kind of building.
Business style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, that whole strip of Nevada down into there, I mean, that all eventually connects together, through the Mojave Desert.
Right.
Mojave Desert's huge.
Yeah.
Is it the biggest desert? No, it's, I don't know. Is it the biggest desert in the U.S.?
Country? In the U.S., let's think.
Because I know the Great Salt Lakes in that region up there, there's a lot of desert too.
Pretty big.
That's the Great Basin up there, though.
Yeah, it used to be wet. Is the other thing.
Mojave is pretty big, and
I mean Santa Fe maybe, like Arizona areas, but that's still part of it.
Shade and water are your biggest ones for survival in the desert, with the possibility of severe cold at night.
Yeah. Nope, it is actually the Great Basin Desert.
Okay.
So it is what they consider to be like east of Oregon, east of California, north of the Mojave, and like Utah.
Pretty much the entire state of Nevada.
Pretty much all Nevada. That's crazy. Yeah, that's 190,000 square miles.
And there's a few calderas in there too. One down south, east of Kernville, Lake Isabella. There's a giant caldera down there.
But this goes to show how much, and this is just the United States. There is an incredible amount of desert terrain in the world that you can easily find yourself in if you're traveling for tourism or even a place like Spain where it's just hot. You're across, exactly. You're across the equator, and heat is an extreme factor that you have to keep in mind. Water, I would think another thing to look out for, depending on where you're at, you can always use lichen, and squeeze water out of lichen. And again, that's usually not found in deserts. But if you're in like a creek bed or a creek stream and you're in the right type of time of season, where there's some moisture, there's always a chance of finding something where you can maybe squeeze the soil, and try to collect some of that water, or even digging down. Digging down is your best bet in that kind of situation.
Look for clusters of plants, and dig down under them.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing which types of plants to look for, which ones like shallower water.
Yeah, that's something.
Some grasses will put roots down like 100 feet just to find water, and digging under one of those is not productive. But if you find the plants that like shallower water, and then that would be an easier way to find water. Know your plants, your desert plant.
Don't dig under cactus. But yes, Chad, go
You
for
can
it.
drink cactus juice though.
Yeah.
You sure can.
I'd take it over no moisture.
Yeah.
Right.
I was going to say something I think is really interesting when you reflect on it, when we're thinking about these different regions, is the importance of knowledge of plants versus region to region, because I don't have to have there's less plant resource where I am. There's a lot, but it's mostly about wood, fuel, burning, trees, things like that. It's like those are the things that I have to know, that you have to know about if you're going to be in a region like mine. But it's really interesting how much more important plant knowledge becomes when you move into the desert, because those resources are critical for moisture, food, survival, and because I just think that's interesting that there seems to be a larger emphasis on plant knowledge in desert survival and in like jungle and swamp survival as well. Especially since there's more plants in deserts and swamps and jungles that can hurt you than my region.
Yes.
They can harm you.
And that's the other thing is, they've naturally evolved to be defensive, and the knowing how to do the test on your skin. If you can flip your wrist over and just rub a bit of that plant on your skin and see if it creates a rash or something. That's generally a good sign to stay away from it. And
Go for purge.
And you want to go 5 minutes on that test, from what I remember.
Yeah, I actually have a funny story. So I was in. This was one of my old companies I used to work at, and some office person was throwing away a plant, and we worked in the shop, so we were like, "Oh, bro, we'll take the plant." And so we kept it. We had this little like pet plant that we'd kind of have around, and it sort of started like dying, and it just became this whole joke for all of us as we were working. And at one point I made this stupid decision. We were all messing around, and I pretended to eat it. But of course I still got a little in my mouth, and I don't know what plant it was, but my whole lower part of my face just was burning numb. Like, it wasn't numb. It felt like it was numb and on fire. It was the worst thing I'd ever done to myself. It was so dumb. And of course everyone's like, why are you having a medical emergency? And I'm like, I don't know. It didn't go away for like 3 hours, dude. It was so bad.
Oh my gosh.
So bad.
But that's that can testify to how dangerous it can be. And there's certain plants, you do that and you're screwed. Like, you don't want to have any contact with them at all.
Right. Right.
And so it's not a universal, like, you definitely have to, it's like a cactus. Don't go rubbing a cactus on your skin, man. It's got needles. It's like, that's its defense. Think about its defense. A rose, it's got thorns. It doesn't have to be poisonous. It's got some big, beefy thorns. So, but a thing like rhubarb, you eat the roots or the leaf of a rhubarb plant, I believe, is poisonous. It's the stem you eat. The leaf and the root are poisonous. That's what I'm saying. The leaf and the root are poisonous.
Right.
So
but the stem is safe.
Yeah, but knowing that kind of stuff, like someone who's never eaten rhubarb in their life, they see a bright red stalk, they're like, ooh, right to the top of it. Oh.
So I'll be real. I didn't know that. I did not know that rhubarb, that only the stem was the edible part.
Some people are allergic to fava beans too. So finding wild beans in the woods may not be a good thing to just go ahead and eat.
Yeah, rhubarb is very poisonous. From what I remember, I forget. I'll look it up. Rhubarb, what happens to you if you eat the leaf?
Rhubarb.
And
you turn into pie.
Dude, every time Cameron and I get groceries anywhere, he's like, "Is there rhubarb pie? Is there rhubarb?" Pie? And then there's just no rhubarb pie anywhere.
Oh yeah, here you go. So it has a high concentration of oxalic acid. or oxalic acid can cause difficulty breathing, nausea, and even kidney stones.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Could you imagine getting a kidney stone? Well, I mean, it takes time, but it's like,
That would be continuous eating.
Yeah, my mom's had 2 kidney stones, and she tells me both of them were the worst things that had ever happened to her. Like she said, she was like, she said, I would give birth to you and your sister again if I could never get a kidney stone ever again.
Right?
Yeah, simultaneously. No, kidney stones are no joke. Stay hydrated, people. Don't, because my mom got those by drinking a lot of soda instead of water, a lot of Diet Coke. So be careful. Kidney stones are not pleasant.
Yeah.
That's just human survival. That's just increase your chance of not having to experience an immense amount of pain. Stay hydrated.
Hail hydrate.
Yes. Or as one of my search and rescue people who trained me, as she would say, hydrate or dihydrate. Yep. She would scream that at us in the line.
Speaking of hydrating, pinch of salt.
I was thinking about that. I was thinking about how useful that could be, Jeff, to have.
They have what plants crave.
If you're going to be going out into keep some kind of salt in your kit. I think people wouldn't think that, but to be able to very simply, casually replenish your electrolytes like that I think would make a huge difference. Just a pinch, just to get those chemicals and those minerals in you.
And sea salts, not iodized salt.
Sea salt.
Table salt.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be sea salts. And as Cameron showed the bag there, you mix different sea salts from around the world, and you'll get different mineral combinations. So depending on where my genetic heritage was Europe, so and the Baltic, so I can take advantage of the minerals from the sea salts that are produced from, say, the coast of France, up in Iceland, up in the Baltic Sea, that kind of thing. So but I take from more places as well. I think I have 10 different sea salts I mix together. So from down in Baja Gold, Icelandic flake, some of them are little pyramid shapes. They're cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting the difference in the texture of the different. Some are flakes that are thin and flat, and some are like little pyramids. It's interesting getting all these different salts. So.
Yeah, man.
From the sea,
now you're talking my language.
Some of
Rocks.
Some of them are like. You ever have the Zotz candy that once you get inside, it starts to tingle? And well, there's one of the salts that does that I have. It really surprised me. It's kind of cooling on the tongue compared to the other salt around it.
Now I want Zotz.
Now we want Zotz.
Well,
I couldn't stand them, but I did eat a couple when I was a kid.
Well, here's an interesting question. What shelters do we see in the desert being a prominent thing?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
anything airy.
Right. I feel like there's the concept of where you could be using it for shade, and then also it's like you might need it, for warmth at night. But I still think creating a shelter, a place where you can have a shaded area that isn't too restricted, but that can still stay warm. Like I think that would probably be the desert's probably one of the best times for, maybe a low lean-to or something like that, or a.
And a lean-to you could put a fire next to that will generate. Yeah. It'll radiate heat into the lean-to structure.
Right, and I think you probably don't have to, because I like to go with tarps where I'm at, because there's such a high likelihood of being rained on or snowed on in these situations. But I feel like there's less of a risk of precipitation in a desert, and so you could think about it you could build it in a different way. But one thing, I don't know if Cameron.
When it rains in the desert, it rains like crazy.
Yeah, Cameron, I mentioned this a little earlier. I forget if you heard it, but I had this realization where I realized that my tarp that has a reflective side, I thought, hey, well, I could flip that over because I normally have the reflective side pointed towards me so that I can maintain my body heat. But if I pointed it away, I thought of that when we were talking about Death Valley.
Yeah.
You could point the reflective side away from you, and now you have it's taking all that heat and taking it away.
Right.
And then that would be a pretty effective. That would be a pretty effective desert shelter and highly visible.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It would
That
tend
would
to
actually
flag
be good.
for pilots looking for you.
Exactly.
The sunlight would flash off of it.
Yeah. And I think a really important one for a desert survival in terms of what kind of shelter I would probably focus on building would probably be a heat wall, because that has some form of shade. I would leave it open so that I can have my fire in front of me and then have a heat wall of some kind behind that fire so that at night I'm taking full advantage of my fire. I don't need to be taking full advantage of my shelter as I do in the winter time in a winter scenario. Whereas fire is so much more easy to create in the desert if you still have your sources of ignition. Your
Right.
fuel is readily available within walking distance, and it doesn't take nearly as much energy to be able
Depending
to
on the
do
desert
that.
you're in, yeah.
Yeah. Depending on where you
Some
are.
deserts don't have a lot of fuel
Right.
like Sahara, but
I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
I'll tell you
I'm
a
a lot
story
closer
about
to
this. Pyramid Lake.
Yeah. That's a
I
desert.
went out there, and in that country, it's like, what, Jeff? 35 minutes to the nearest hospital
Yeah.
that can treat you for rattlesnake bites.
Yeah.
So it's pretty dangerous. Really dangerous because rattlesnakes love it there.
Yeah.
But one thing that we learned by mistake, was burning I think it must have been sagebrush. I think it was. We were pulling a little bit of sagebrush that was old, and it was right by the coast of the lake. And I wasn't familiar with the terrain as much, but we started burning this stuff, and it felt like it poisoned our bodies. Like, we woke up feeling terrible. And that's why I can't remember exactly. But let me look it up, because I believe it was. Also, Dank, I did see you need to head out.
Yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. It is starting to cut in and out for me too, for some reason. Probably the data box. But was
Yeah,
fun.
I'm not sure. Hey,
Enjoyed it.
yeah. We enjoyed having you, man. Thanks for coming in.
Good talking to you.
Thank you for having me. Talk to you guys later.
Oh yeah. See you, Dank.
Take care, man.
Take it easy.
Whoa. Now I'm up there.
It's quiet too. Gosh, dude.
You get a head rush with that?
Yeah. Vasovagal. Whoa.
Chase the bagel.
Yes, burning sagebrush can negatively affect your lungs. So yeah, you get its potential for long-term effects, respiratory irritation. So
don't
That's
smoke
why-
a sagebrush.
that's why when you get all these brush fires, it's really bad smoke.
Interesting.
Because
That's probably what was going on. Yeah, because one time I was in a fire season, living in my car. We're going to talk about living in a car a lot, but yeah, and the smoke was so. I couldn't breathe. I had a headache.
It looks like your background there.
I was so worried. I felt so bad in the smoke that I had to go to a hotel because I was like, I'm worried I'm not going to wake up in the morning. I feel so bad right now.
Yeah.
So I had to go somewhere to where I felt like my air was at least not direct smoke because it was heavy.
Yeah, dude, I felt like I was choking because we were getting hit in the face directly by a fire of sagebrush.
Oh yeah.
We didn't think anything of it at the time.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
it's
it's like
just smoke.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
not
like,
gonna try to inhale it.
I've burned sagebrush too, but I mostly do it for the smell, and I'll just take like a stalk of it and lay it on the fire.
Yeah,
But
that's
I don't know how much sagebrush you guys were burning, but
all of it was sagebrush.
all of it. Yeah, of course. Yeah,
Pure
that
sagebrush.
would probably mess you up. I didn't know it was so negative. I didn't know that it was so harmful to breathe sagebrush smoke like that.
Yeah, I was like, we were red in the face. We looked like we got sunburned in the face.
Shit.
And then oh, you're fine. And then
No idea.
You'll get the same effect with burning poison oak.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the other thing I've heard.
Down in the lower elevations, when the poison oak goes up, it'll really irritate your lungs and give you the same symptoms that you're talking about.
Yeah. If I were to mention the only dangerous plants where I live, it's poison oak and stinging nettle.
Yeah.
I've got a good story about stinging nettle real quick. Also, stinging nettle makes a very good tea though if you get it at the right time. Stinging nettle.
I've never seen stinging nettle.
Oh,
in my life.
well, that's the scary thing is that you don't see it until you don't see it until you're like, oh my God, why is this one line on my skin inflamed, red, and stinging? And then you look around and you're like, oh, I'm in stinging nettle. Right. But we had a guy in search and rescue. Yeah, we were out in the woods and there was stinging nettle all over the place. And I mean, we were trying, like, I bring my sleeves down, it's like I can deal with stinging nettle. I don't care. But this guy, I don't know how he did it. But I looked down the search line and all of a sudden he's just like, he was on a different crew. I wasn't actually there for this. That was a different emergency I'm thinking of. But but no, he comes back to the camp and he's just like his whole face is just absolutely messed up. And he's having a thing and I'm like, dude, what's going on? Like, are you okay? And he's like, I got stinging nettle in my eye.
Ooh.
Can't imagine that. But he was down for the count. I mean, he couldn't see, he couldn't walk. He was having like an anxiety response to it.
Yeah.
It was not pretty. Yeah, you got to watch out for stinging nettle and poison oak.
As far as desert-like plants, gopher purge. It's a euphorbia. So it's a very drought-tolerant desert-like plant as well. Mm-hmm. That's a skin irritant, and especially if you touch it and then rub your eyes. It's the leaf pattern comes off opposite on each junction. So whatever the leaf was, the last one, the next one will be 90 degrees from it.
Okay.
So it's very easy to identify if you're looking for it, where the leaf pattern is so strongly opposite each progressive set of leaves, and it'll stand about almost 3 feet tall. So
and then
I planted it on purpose because I wanted to get rid of the gophers, or at least keep them out of my yard, and I didn't realize how much of a skin irritant it was. And Roger rubbed his eyes and ended up in the hospital because he couldn't see. God. So
yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah, Roger. It's a euphorbia, which is a desert plant, basically.
Yeah.
I'll have to look up.
There's another plant. Naturally, mint acts as a irritant for insects, if I'm not mistaken.
I have heard that before too.
Like if you plant mint, and there's another thing I can't quite remember, but something you plant that'll keep insects away from your crops more likely. And you can kind of throw it around on the outskirts.
Yeah.
And it can help prevent mites from trying to crawl around. And that's what I believe one of the farmers I was working with was throwing those in, and occasionally you'd see those like intertwined with the squash. And, you just don't pull it because and then essentially at the end of the season, it just adds to the nutrients in that soil. And mint speaks for itself. Mint you can use for all sorts of things.
Right.
Mint's awesome. Mint's one of my favorite plants.
That's
cool. You could rub it on your skin. You just take the leaves, rub it on your skin as a mosquito repellent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great Great natural repellent.
If you're going to plant it, though, plant it in a place you don't mind it taking over, because it will.
Yeah. That's the problem with mint. That's why I forgot exactly what that plant was, because it was like related to mint, but it was less. It had like a slower growth. If I can't like maybe it was anise, because the black licorice tasting stuff, that stuff's very anti-bug, and it's a strong scent, but it's not as invasive, if I remember, as a typical mint.
I know honorable mention burning cow pies.
What are those?
Just cow poop, dried cow poop.
Oh yeah.
That helps to repel
Yes.
insects as well. It's that's one that just depends on where you are, because Cameron, where we are, there is like a lot of the land out here. It has at some point been free range cattle ground, so there's lots of cow pies to be found out where we are, and dependent on where you are, you might be finding lots of cow pies, and those are a great source of fuel for your fire, and especially in desert, because there's a lot less. You might be likely to be in an area that was once a free range cattle area, but so there's, there might not be a lot of trees, but you can burn those cow pies and they work great as fuel, and they work great as an insect repellent.
They also work great for growing mushrooms.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that being the case.
Oh yeah.
Well, I know that's the case. Yeah, I haven't ever found them, but I've heard of them.
Yeah.
The classic. But
so the rumor goes, yeah.
Yeah, that's how the rumor goes. And then let's see. I mean, if there's anything in the desert right now we can think of, plant wise, I mean, cactus, I would go about cutting it, depending on what kind of cactus it is. If you have those nice flat, almost saw looking ones, those are good to cut down, and you could easily put those in a pot. The problem is like trying to boil them. That's why bringing water on hand is a good thing. Just even a little bit of water to help bring those juices out, like it gets you some nutrients. Again, I'm not a cactus expert. I've never really lived directly in the desert, so
yeah. I mostly know just about like prickly pear and things like that. Like you can eat that.
And the cold, I can attest to the cold. Desert's real cold.
I would worry more about water than anything else. Like I'll go back to weeks without food, days without water, minutes without air. So, water in the desert, unless you're going to be there for a week or better, you don't really need to consider food, unless you don't have a lot of extra that you're packing around.
Right.
Most people that find themselves out in the wilderness have plenty to pack around. They're not used to being out there. So that's what the people that you would go to find, Chad.
Yeah.
And the people that have no idea what it takes to survive in a situation like that.
And I think there's a lot of like misnomers out there for true survival knowledge. Like there's a lot of trains of thought that are pretty good in fantasy. And I mean, not just in fantasy, because it can all be applied, but you got to really look at the realistic circumstance that you might find yourself in. That's why a lot of the times I find that when you're really trying to think about survival, it's really important to think realistically. What situation am I going to find myself in my environment, my terrain, and my activity? That's, to me, one of the most important things about prepping for survival. And it's very important in the desert because you have to pack the right amount of water for whatever you're going to be doing.
Exactly.
It's paramount.
Yeah. And
most important in the desert.
Well, and the big, a lot of times when you have problems in the deserts, it's usually because someone didn't bring enough water, someone got injured, or someone's driving where they shouldn't be without enough gas or supplies.
Right.
So it's a lot easier to track in the desert because of that fact, but it's not easy to get out. due to, I mean, there's a lot of factors, and you can't just necessarily fire off a flare everywhere.
Yeah.
Because it's so, I mean, you could start a fire, and then if you're trying to escape a fire, between all this, I mean, you could easily get killed with the winds out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people underestimate that, but you know that there's,
Or
in some of these places,
with a
there's a lot
fire
of brush.
shelter, you got to be in a certain position for that shelter to work properly. There was a group up in Oregon, I believe it was, a group of wildland firefighters, and the fire changed positions, and they were set up. There was nothing around them. There was large cobble field that they set up their fire shelter on, and the fire actually went under their fire shelters through the cobble rocks and basically cooked them like a grill, even in their fire shelters.
Yeah.
So just because there's nothing around you during a fire, you know, doesn't mean that you're safe. You know, find water, try to submerge as much of you as you can, and, you know, drink through or take air through a straw and be completely submerged if you have to. You know, that's your safest bet in a forest fire.
Yeah.
Is being in the water. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I know the next best trick that you can do is to simply douse yourself and lay down if you can.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you need water. You can't just lay down. It's like, I know people have done that in the past. I mean, it's more of because you dump water on yourself, take a wet rag and put it over your head and just lay face down. That can work in a pinch, but you need a lot of stuff to be able to eat. It's like that's a circumstance thing.
Yeah,
it's tough to survive a forest fire. It's dangerous. It's tough.
Yeah.
No, I had a friend who was working on fire crew out in John Day and almost got trapped just like that between a fire and a place they couldn't pass. It's probably a river, so they could have passed through the river, but they would have had to ditch all their gear because you can't swim through that river with all their fire gear.
No,
I'm pretty sure they were able to get to an evac point. I got to ask her that story again, but I'm pretty sure they were able to get to an evac point and they got out through helicopter.
Lisa and I drove through there when that was on fire. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to go that route or have to make a detour, but it was just before that, totally torched.
Mm-hmm.
So
it
could happen in the middle of a trip, you know.
Yeah, definitely something to watch out for if you're surviving in a desert. And if you're surviving anywhere, be conscious of your fire, because that's the last thing you want to do. I mean, it might help you get found, but, you know, at your own risk of accidentally starting a forest fire,
which takes you out,
or a brush fire in a desert. I mean, you could be sleeping if you can manage to get a wink of sleep while you're surviving.
Yeah,
and wake up and there's a brush fire around you. That's not a good situation.
Yeah,
and it's avoidable.
That's the very, very, very last resort, is creating a fire that's at a pretty substantial size. And if it's something like that's going to sprawl into a huge wildfire, and you know that the area you're at has, you know, populace, like, don't do that. Like, I would recommend you just try to find any other option, because living with yourself, trying to take in what you've just done too might be worse than actually getting help. I mean, and then facing criminal charges.
Right. Truly the best thing. Yeah, truly the best thing to do.
Make bonfire so they see you and end up burning a town down or something. Yeah.
I mean, it's all scary. It's a scary reality.
And it's just something that I think's not mentioned, that I think should be more conscious of in the context of survival, is caution with your fire, because that fire can cause you, it's vital to your survival, but it can very quickly backfire if you're not careful. Because again, Survivor Man Les Stroud, something that happened to him that he was not ready for was he was surviving up in the fjords of not fjords, but like up in Alaskan coastline. And he built himself a pretty awesome shelter out of driftwood and wood and stuff like that. But he had his fire too close to his shelter, and his shelter caught on fire while he was in it. I was
just about to say that, like, shelters catching fire.
It's a risk. It's something that needs to be considered and needs to have caution.
If you are sleeping, you know, in the middle of the night.
Yeah, that's why when I was sleeping outside, I had a fire pit dug in to help prevent that. And I would use long pieces and try to use the coals before I went to bed, because I would supervise the flames and then had those pipes going under plywood and would have my stuff on that plywood. But it was still always a risk that I'm like, I got to be ready just in case if this ever caught fire. Like, I would feel it. I know that. And it being plywood that's kind of damp, just, it's going to be real tough. Yeah. But there was always that risk in my head of, there's something that could pop on there. And it just takes one good start when you're not paying attention.
Well, you remember when we were, when you and me went to camping, and when we camped up in Northern California and we spent the night right next to a fire instead of we spent the night under the stars. I made sure to be very conscious of you and me to make sure that we didn't accidentally catch our sleeping bags on fire. It's completely possible for that to happen. And that was part of the reason I was motivated to stay more conscious and awake all night, not just to feed the fire for my chauffeur, but Cameron did a lot of driving, so he was a lot more tired than me. But no, I wanted to make sure to stay awake to A, feed the fire, and B, make sure that Cameron was safe, and make sure that he didn't either roll too close to the fire or have just a loose thing come too close to him, because you were pretty out. I mean, I don't know how well
I was, but that's also like knowing exactly why you don't want to be by yourself. Because
again, survival is a team. That wasn't a survival situation, but we were exposed.
Oh yeah, and I know myself, and I do knock out. And I've had instances where animals have snuck up on me and people have caught that. Yeah, and that kind of freaks me out. Like,
I was gonna say we did have a firearm with us that day too.
Yeah, you always have to be prepared. So
preparation is very important for survival. I mean, that's why we're talking about it. I think it's a good topic to have in people's minds.
Now, Jeff, what were you saying? Your wife made you? She was doing what?
What were you talking about?
Fires and prevention of shelters burning. You said your wife was. You were saying something. Chad was talking and.
Oh, just. I don't remember bringing up my wife, but yeah, she did not go camping with me. I always camped off a motorcycle, and then I would put my tent upwind from the fire so that the smoke would go away and any embers would blow away from the tent. So that's something to think of. Even though you have a surround to try to get the heat in, you want to still be upwind of the fire.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
And then the what else was I trying to say? Don't know.
No, I understand it.
I was getting into what Chad was saying.
Yeah, this is the fun thing about survival. And I mean, we've already almost have a 3-hour recording on it. It's a very deep subject and it's important. And I think for time's sake, we'll go ahead and skip one that I know we ultimately don't know anything about jungles and tropical terrain. I can't tell you plants there really, outside of I know that there's a lot of water and you can drink off of leaves. Good luck.
Yeah, that's how I feel about jungle survival sometimes. Good luck. Just like it's a similar concept to like Arctic and snow. There's a very large but your survival in snow is and in Arctic is also very dependent on your own mental fortitude, your physical fortitude, your ability to save energy and to not get too winded and to stay warm. But in a jungle,
not to
there's so many more factors in a jungle and like microbial issues.
You still got the big cats that'll try to kill you, but also big snakes.
Snakes, insects. Their list goes on of things that are
harmful.
It's like the craziest thing that we have to deal with up where we are is rattlesnakes. But rattlesnakes are not as violent as people think. They're relatively passive, and that you can kind of know where they're going to be. They're going to be around water. That's the thing. So it's like if you're walking around rocks. Yeah, if you're walking around on rocks on the near a source of water, you got to be like, okay, there's probably snakes here. There might be snakes.
Yeah, I've been looking for snakes the last 2 weeks a lot.
I wanted
especially around the Columbia.
Yeah. I wanted to show it just because when else am I going to get to show this on our podcast? But no, this is what Cameron and I ended up having with us while we were camping.
Oh yeah, man.
Animals. It's just a good
Everything.
capable. It is. Let's see if I can get this in there. Don't worry.
357.
Yep, 357, and it is unloaded.
Yes.
Yeah.
Chad is he's a certified gun handler, so he can legally do this. Don't worry, anyone who's questioning. Chad's very, very trained on firearms. So, and I'm also trained. My firearm is a grandfathered one. So, I enjoy the historical value it brings. I don't really plan to take that on a hunting trip with me ever. That's just, these days they make a lot lighter guns. You don't need to haul your great grandfather's French Indian or Spanish American War.
Yeah.
M1 carbine, yeah.
Right. Oh man, yeah. No, a lot of my firearms are very practical because to me, my firearms are survival tools in every. That's their ultimate function for me. I mean, I do have quite a few of them because it does branch into a hobby of mine. But ultimately, I like to invest in my survival, and that's having survival-oriented guns that are 20 that I can use to procure food if I need to, and also to defend myself from wild animals or people.
Yeah,
that's another thing that I want to sort of bring up real quick while we're sort of on this topic a little bit is that's one of the most dangerous things that there's a lot of nuance to it, but that's the thing that can truly be harmful in the woods is if you encounter someone who you don't want to encounter.
Yes.
Because maybe you don't have cell. Maybe you're alone. Maybe you're with someone you love, but encountering an animal in the woods is a different danger. It has a different type of manageableness to it versus encountering someone who you don't want to encounter. You want to be prepared for that as well. You have to know. You have to know that when you go into the woods and you leave cell coverage behind, you're on your own. You are responsible for your safety and the safety of those around you. It's very important to be aware of that idea. To me, something I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I would agree, and
Agreed too.
On the lines of that, like having a good understanding of who's in that area generally. If there's government, if there's you want to know the land that you're going to, because the last thing you want to do is have a camping trip on Area 51. Like,
yeah, no, there's odd things that take place in the American forests too. It's a reality of it. I've encountered strange things, but nothing. Yeah. I haven't encountered anything yet to where I felt like my life was in immediate danger. But
no Sasquatch.
No Sasquatch. No, that wasn't Sasquatch. That was just a weird feeling. I have been camping in a part of the woods where I just had a weird spiritual paranormal thing, and so I don't camp there anymore. But
you're not the first one.
Yeah,
and
you're last.
The important thing I'll highlight with like forests, before we'll move into, I think, coastal. I think it's about time to get into
think coastal. I think that because I can talk
that one. I also have some stuff, but in forest, you want to make sure that you always trace, and really anywhere you go, you want to make sure you know where you came from. It's a really important thing. At least have general bearings of the direction. At the bare minimum, especially if you're going up and down mountains. I know it can be tough to track exactly what road you came off of, but having a map, very important. That's a wonderful resource if you're able to get it. But having a compass, I think, is even more vital.
Yeah, compass, and if you can afford it, a good GPS.
In general, you can track
GPS.
And in general, you can track the sun, but when you're in a deep crevice of a mountain, you're not going to be able to really see where that leads unless you get a good vantage. And people don't think about that, and then they find themselves climbing a mountain into the wrong direction, and then they're like, "Fuck!"
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and it's genuine. That's a
You know-
genuine. You're in the middle of nowhere. You're screwed.
Yeah.
You are gonna be on a mountain saying, "Ah!"
Yeah,
Like-
I don't know if you were here when I mentioned this before, Cameron, but one incredibly dangerous thing that you can do to yourself in a mountainous terrain is to get yourself completely stuck to where if you're traveling downhill, you might end up in a point where you can't go down any farther safely without ropes. And then you can't, and then you look back up and you're exhausted and you can't
Mhm.
climb back up. Now and maybe it's too technical and too difficult to actually climb back up. You could climb down, but not back up. Now you're totally stuck. That's
Yeah.
dangerous. That has killed people before.
Oh yeah.
But one thing I wanted to mention from my perspective as someone who is in the search and rescue, one of the most common questions that I get about search and rescue, other than the stairs, is should I stay put or should I travel? And I generally do actually recommend to people, I say, if you feel like you have the confidence to be able to safely travel, do it. But the caveat here, leave as much sign as you possibly can. Break branches, overturn rocks, do anything you can do to make people know you were there. And this is important too. This helps us a lot if we can, if depending on what we find, leave arrows, leave sticks that are clear human-made arrows, because we will see that, and we will see that arrow. And because think about this, when you're traveling, when you're staying put is the safest option. That's what I tell children. I say, stay put. When I'm talking to a child, stay put. If you don't feel like you can safely move through the woods, stay put. If you're injured, stay put. If you're if it's cold and you don't feel like you can move without breaking a sweat, stay put.
That's why animals are great too. I don't like calling them a tool, but they really are a tool in a survival situation that they could either get help, they can add warmth,
boost morale,
and boost morale. And those three things
the warmth
The
warmth is a huge thing. I always thought about that when I was out with my dog. I was like, if I ended up in a situation, I'm just like, my big fat dog.
But how do dogs sleep together in a pile?
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention too, but if you think about, if you can move, then you should move, because when you move and you leave copious signs, hang bandanas. I know I sound like a crazy person right now, but anything, hang brightly colored things and trash, make it obvious that someone put it there, that it's not there by accident. Hang it in my eye line so that if I'm looking straight ahead, I might see it. That can stand out to us as search and rescue personnel. And here's the other thing to think about. When we're looking for a missing person, of course, obviously we don't know where that person is. We have something called a last known position. And that last known position, or LKP, could be their car. It could be a piece of trash we found. It could be an arrow. It could be lots of those things. And if you travel, you're creating a much larger footprint across a straight line, which is a barrier. So if we can manage to see that line, we are so much more likely to find you. Because if you spread out your trace across a larger area, that increases the chances of getting noticed. And that's why those arrows are so important to show which direction you're going. Because the minute I find an arrow, and try to stay committed to a direction, like Cameron was saying, with a compass or a GPS, that helps a lot, because that helps you from going in a circle. It helps you from getting yourself into a odd area, because if you get yourself into a weird spot, you can change your direction. You can decide to head a different direction for a bit and continue to leave arrows to show your changes in direction. But once I find an arrow, if I was in search, I never actually did, but if I was in search and rescue and found an arrow, I would immediately shoot a bearing on that arrow. I would immediately take my compass, figure out the direction of that, and then head on that bearing and try to find you. That's my biggest recommendation to people, is to leave sign, leave trace, make it obvious.
Great idea. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have one other thing I can share about the forest that I definitely want to touch on. Let's see, window, here it is. I kind of created a little painting. Yeah, I know, it's pretty epic.
It's perfect, Cameron.
It's so this is your river, the blue is the river. So this is the basic principle, is you make some sort of dugout, like you did when you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
And you make it to where the sticks kind of kind of channel it a little, just ever so slightly narrow, into that hole, because you want it to be, you don't want it to be a massive canal here.
Right.
You want it to be definitely a small stream size, and then the fish will get confused. They kind of really can't get out very easily because of
like
how their depth. Yeah, kind of how their depth perception works, and you can trap them in that hole, and that can be another passive trap.
I was
you
just
can do
gonna say,
multiple
it's a
of these.
perfect example of passive fishing.
And it's safe in a strong stream, because you don't have to throw net traps or
right.
it also basket traps.
Yeah, and it takes very little energy to make that structure.
Yes, this is a really effective trap too.
And the other nice thing is you can make this in a lake, you can make this in a river, you can make this in coastal areas depending on tide and things like that.
Yeah,
it's a very effective fish trap.
The great thing too is this is something people use to catch bigger fish on some of these bigger rivers.
Yeah.
So, you could cut that fish up into a bunch of pieces and have that as bait for all sorts of things, man. And I mean, all sorts of things love fish. So
right.
Yeah,
that'll work even on a bayou.
Yeah, in the swamp I'd use that. Like, you may not get the big flow, but I just make it smaller. But that's the same thing with a bottle trap. Have you guys ever seen those? Like, say we have a Gatorade bottle here, and they invert the lid. Mm-hmm. Even just that's the basic concept.
That's a good one too, because you can catch crawdads with that as well.
Yes.
If your region has crawdads it's very easy to create a crawdad trap of some kind. I mean,
I can't eat it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Hey, Jeff, Jeff is bait in a survival situation.
Yeah. It's funny that we're about to talk about coastal stuff, and it's like I think half the stuff we're going to talk about Jeff can't even eat.
Eats without food.
Well,
without water.
Can you eat? Can you eat like mussels and clams? Or can you not even eat those?
I can eat the shellfish. I can't eat the crustaceans.
Got it. Okay, good.
Yeah, he'd be out there.
No crab, no shrimp, no lobster.
Soul.
No prawn.
Sometimes I imagine
krill supplements, and I didn't know I was allergic to them.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, I had to quit.
But
I couldn't understand why I was so inflamed and achy and just felt miserable. It's like I'm taking krill supplements.
So we'll formally go to coastal. Chad, what were you trying to say?
Oh, I was going to say something really stupid. I was talking about how one thing that I have always thought would probably end up happening with me, just knowing how I operate. I think if I ended up in a survival situation, I would start to just pretend like I was an animal, just like, going around like, like sticks and just like, because I mean, it's like, hey, go with the flow, man. I guess if I'm just going to survive out here, I might as well just,
I do think animals.
When in Rome.
Yeah, I think animals would tend to leave you alone more. They'd be like, "What is that?
Why is that
a Wendigo?"
Learn to make a skin boat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's definitely
driftwood and a dead animal skin. But
there's some truth though to that mentality in the survival. It's like I'm the alpha. You have
to think differently. Like I think that's something that's not mentioned a lot when we're talking about survival, is that it becomes so man versus wild, when in reality, I think it's the opposite. I think you want to do the opposite. I think you want to try to be as in tune with it and as calm about it as you can. And if that means kind of like having fun, pretending like you're an animal and eating, just trying to survive like an animal, be kind of, that's what I imagine is going to happen to me. I'm going to turn into like a wild man.
I guess saying alpha isn't the right way to put it. The better way I'd say is you're the captain of your ship. Mm-hmm. And you need to make decisions, because this weather's not going to wait for you. This environment's not going to stop.
No,
nothing's going to change because
nature will
of your
never
circumstance.
Stop. Yeah, nature doesn't care at all whether you live or die. It doesn't care. Yeah. Yeah.
So being aware of that first and foremost, like when you're on the coast, seasons are a huge thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
you
was
are
just thinking about that. You've got risk of extreme weather.
Especially the East Coast.
And unpredictable extreme weather, unexpected.
I would say, out of all these environments, you could probably die the quickest on the coast.
Yeah.
Because of easy, simple mistakes like walking. Now, I'm not going to say the jungle and the swamp aren't any less dangerous. They could easily have similar things, but generally speaking, you'll just get sick or poisoned or mangled, and then have to deal with that. But the ocean could easily slam you into a rock, crack your skull, you're dead. Like, it's like meat grinder.
Once you're in the ocean, you're no longer the top of the food chain.
Oh. Yeah, and you spill blood, and that's a whole nother factor when it comes to ocean is injuries. Your injuries are terribly, and all these it could be bad, but forest, desert, and winter, it's not as prominent as swamp, jungle, coastal, because it's wet all the time.
And again, you got to think about microbial risk.
Yep.
It's different in a swamp jungle than it is in the forest. Like if I get cut in the forest, I don't care. But if I got cut in a jungle or in a swamp, I'd be concerned.
Even Hawaii freaked me out, man. When I had an urchin in my foot, they told me, because it was a spine that was old, that it probably didn't have poison. But they're like, if it does, and you jump into this water, in this waterfall, which I did, but I still was like weirded out. I'm like, I hope I don't get this weird, like crazy Hawaiian thing that they're talking about. I'm like, I don't know, do it for the trip, man.
Hawaiian urchin death.
Yeah, it was something bad. Like I some nerve damage or something it could cause if you had this infection it would cause.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing with getting injured and being in the ocean is attracting things that could eat you.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to just surviving a bacterial infection days later, So.
And that's the other thing is making sure that you properly cook your food, because nothing's going to destroy you more than
sushi for you.
I believe you can. Well, yeah, you can have mussels fresh.
Yeah, you can eat raw mussels, raw oysters. I mean, raw mussels are not going to be nearly as pleasant as raw oysters.
Raw oysters actually taste like cucumbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love oysters, but one thing I want to say though is that actually, believe it or not, I mean, if I had to choose a place where I was going to survive, I would actually choose the coast, just because
there's an abundance of food.
Just more of an abundance of resource on the coast, because you have food. There's lots more there at least where I live, a lot of like plants that you can actually eat are on the coast. And there's just more resource as far as food goes. Water is its own thing. I mean, hopefully there is a source of fresh water flowing into wherever you are. That's just a hope. And of course you can make a solar still, and you can, distill salt water. Those are things that are all possible. They just take effort and engineering to be able to pull off.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing too about coast that people don't think about, the best thing about surviving on the coastline is garbage.
Yes.
Resource. You when you are surviving on the coast, you have a high likelihood of being able to find man-made resources readily available to you that replenish themselves over time. And that is invaluable, because who knows what could wash up. Your situation could change depending on what might wash up.
Or what might wash away.
Yeah.
And that's the other factor.
That's another thing to think about too when you're right.
And being able to be nomadic
on the beach, right?
Yeah.
Well, being able to be nomadic to a degree is important on the coast, because sometimes weather willing, I mean, if you're getting dumped on and your shelter's blowing apart literally because of the wind,
right?
One good thing to note is for people who, and again, coastlines vary so much, but like the Oregon coast is blessed with a lot of rock. So
Yeah.
there's natural caves and inserts that you
Yeah.
can easily
It's-
shelter in and
yeah,
weather a
it's like-
storm.
Yeah,
But
Oregon is
also-
just, yeah.
Also, if you go in there during a really high storm surge, you're not getting out. You're fucking stuck. Excuse
Yeah.
my French, but I mean, it's scary. It's scary to me because I've seen that kind of weather, and when the ocean's starting to change rapidly, and you're like, you feel like you're not ready to go, and you're trying to dig deeper into it. You better know what you're doing, because
You know where you
It
and me
gets
are going to go,
dangerous.
Cameron, pretty soon?
Huh.
We're going to go to Hug Point in Oregon.
Is
Have you
that
been
like-
to Hug Point?
no.
Are you
Hug
gonna
Point
hug?
is yeah. Hug Point also, yeah, and of course at Hug Point there's like a couple sea caves that you can walk into.
That's awesome.
But at Hug Point, the really cool thing about Hug Point that I think you would love, there's tide pools, which
Oh,
are cool.
yeah.
And then
Love tide pools.
the coolest thing about Hug Point is that Hug Point, because there's this huge cliff, and at one point they cut a road into this cliff. So it's literally a road that's covered in like barnacles and sea
Oh, wow.
life because they built this road for the US Postal Service, because it was the only way to, on the coast, because of the coast range at this time, it was the only way to get around that particular cliff to be able to get to, the north-south ends of the different townships that were there at the time.
Wow.
And so they used to take a wagon on this road, and they had to hit it at a certain time or else it'd be underwater. So I just think you will think it's really cool that we can walk this old road that's been carved into a cliffside on
Yes.
Hug Point. And again, you got to be careful, because if you go over the road and you don't time it right, the tide will come in and you're stuck on the one side of the beach and you can't get to your car. It's
wait
real.
till-
It's happened to people. It's a real thing.
Gosh, man.
Sounds
But
cool.
yeah,
I
there's
won't
a cave. But yeah, there's a cave over there, and the tides in Oregon are fast too. And there was one time I was at Hug Point, and I went deep into this cave, and I wasn't even there. Like I was like, the beach was at like a normal place, and I probably wasn't even in there like maybe to 10 minutes, and I come out and there's already waves like coming into the, like, ebbing and flowing to the mouth of the cave. It's real deal. It can sneak up on you.
Yeah.
Getting stuck by tides, I think, is a really dangerous part of coastal survival. It's got to be paying attention.
That
yeah.
and even in the summertime, it can get extremely cold in the evening time on the coast.
Mm-hmm.
There's an old adage. It said the coldest winter I've ever spent was a summer in San Francisco, just because the cold ocean air comes in, the interior
Oh, here we
air
go.
rises and it pulls that coastal air in over the land.
Yeah, this kind of displays it. Kind of, and you can
Yeah.
see, like, we get that Alaskan current too, that comes in up there, and so Oregon gets it definitely, like, the bend of how the continent goes.
Yeah.
Like, you can see all that pressure. It's just kind of almost pinched, and it creates this choppiness between the Oregon and California coast.
Yeah, Oregon has a relatively harsh coast. It's not like other
Yeah.
places, but I mean, it's no joke. The nice thing I like about Oregon coast is that it has it's all public land, so you can go to any part of the coast whenever you want. And the other cool thing is that it has beautiful rocky features, but since it's a super, powerful ocean with heavy wind and storm, it still has sugar sand beach.
Yeah.
It's I really like the Oregon coast. I'm not a huge coast guy, but if I'm going to go to the coast,
Oregon coast.
Yeah.
Oregon
man.
coast is gorgeous.
Southern Oregon coast is where I went.
Yeah, out in the dunes and stuff like that.
I was trucking, so it was one of the larger highways. Yeah, call it a river.
Yeah,
That's
that
cool.
was Rogue River. Dude, I bet you Chaz's computer died.
I guess
Classic.
we're done.
Dude, I honestly
3
think
hours.
yeah. Let me message him real fast and see.
Whoops.
Oops, computer die, he said.
Yeah. Didn't have it plugged in.
We're gonna have to come back to this subject at some point for the off the grid stuff.
Mhm.
I think it's good to touch on.
That might be good connected with like homesteading or something.
Yeah, and I knew that would probably end up being shelved because this
Just
It's
living
survival.
off the grid is basically survival on a daily basis forever, you know.
Yeah.
So we dove pretty good, Cameron.
Yeah. I think
Picked apart the desert. We picked apart the mountains and got pretty close to picking apart the coast.
yeah, there's a lot of good knowledge that came out of this, and I feel if someone's out there trying to get a good idea of what is involved with getting versed in survival, getting versed into the survival world of things, practice, patience, and preparation. You know, the 3 P's. You really need to secure those before you're ever going out on a trip. You know, make sure you have plenty of water. Make sure you have plenty of understanding of the plant life around your area, so you're not eating poisonous plants or what have you. So we'll come back to this at some point with our homesteading off the grid subjects, and I think that would be a fun thing to dive into. And as for today, we're going to go ahead and close out. Welcome to this intellectual adventure. We enjoyed having you. And if you made it this far, thank you. Until next time.